Today, we are joined by a very special guest, media journalist extraordinaire, Stephen Totilo, who somehow became the most feared journalist within Nintendo when we were there. He was like, totally just, everyone was scared of Stephen.
Nobody wanted to talk to him.
But he was like the nicest guy
He's a nice
ever.
guy.
We love him, but people were scared inside Nintendo, maybe still are. And we're going to tell you guys why in just a moment.
He is really one of the game journalism OGs and has worked at some really amazing places. And, you know, he started his own thing and now he's just sitting on all of this kind of legacy content that he's sifting through, but he's also doing some great reporting on what's happening now. So I think this is going to be a really cool conversation.
Yes, absolutely. I'm excited to catch up with Stephen. We love him, but yeah, he had
Maybe he'll corner you.
Great, I'm ready for it.
Ask you to pepper you with questions.
Go for it.
What?
I'm an open book. Ask me anything. I will answer it. I don't have any secrets. We did a big reaction to the surprising Mario Day news. The surprising thing for us, though, wasn't the actual news. That was fine. That was pretty yes, we kind of saw that coming. The surprising thing to us, though, was that Nintendo actually acknowledged Mario Day and had news come out on Mario Day.
You just contradicted yourself. You said it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal that there was news, but the big deal was that there was news.
No, the big deal was that Nintendo acknowledged Mario Day. That was the shocker.
We're going to be talking about that in the news section ourselves, but yes. That
was the shocker.
We have a full reaction if you'd like to see us break it all down in detail.
Shocking.
Indeed. Wow.
Shock.
Always great on a Sunday morning.
It's like 2 a.m.
Great way to start a Sunday morning. I guess I gotta make a YouTube short or something.
I know.
I better get going.
I was still in bed. I was like,
it's daylight savings.
I know.
Also.
I lost an hour.
So,
I woke up to this nonsense.
People have varying degrees of sensitivity to daylight savings. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But some people are not. Maybe you.
I took a nap
I don't know.
a long time yesterday.
You were not available.
I'm still a little sleepy
until late
now.
at night. Snap out of it.
My hour, though.
Jeez.
I need my hour back.
My
hour. We have a really special Super Kit and Krysta 64 episode coming up this week. Well, by the time you guys are watching this is out, our Patreon family got it a little early, which is great. But we wanted to show you guys what it's actually like at a video game studio. Kind of days in the days leading up to a big game release. We've obviously seen some of that before, but it's really cool to go and just get a behind the scenes look at how teams in a video game studio prepares for it. It might be a little bit different than what you expect actually. So we headed over to visit Digital Eclipse.
That's right.
Which is right here in the Bay Area, and caught up with our good friend Chris Kohler. And he basically took us inside Digital Eclipse the days before their new game Llamasoft, the Jeff Minter story, came out, and showed us what was going on at the studio, which was really cool.
Yeah, that's a studio that I think we have a lot of admiration for, so we're very lucky to be able to go inside and film and really snoop around.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to see, how a game gets made and how they get inspiration and how they collaborate with each other.
Yeah.
I got this great shirt.
You did.
Which, again, when everybody thinks of me, they say, just another high-strung prima donna from Atari. That's what they think. That's literally me.
You are.
That's me. So I have to wear the shirt.
You on a shirt.
Right. But no, they have really pioneered this new genre of interactive documentaries, which are really exciting and feel important in the role of game preservation and game history. So we got to talk to them a little bit about that. And they are just cataloging so much interesting information and content and just materials from the past that kind of are about to be lost.
Yeah.
So it is this really important thing that they're doing.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting, too, because it's very rare that a new video game genre,
emerges.
Thank you. Usually it's, there's maybe mashups of two existing genres or a new take on a very traditional video game genre, but to just pioneer a brand new way of how we, perceive video games and how we interact with video games is really something that is not to be taken lightly. And they are the only people that I know that are doing something like this. and have really like, twisted my mindset on how I interact and learn about historic video games that I may have missed. And, you and I were talking about how a lot of the stuff that they do, like we may not even have that much nostalgia for it, but we just know it's going to be interesting and good, and we're going to learn a lot. And so we're pretty much in on like every digital Eclipse anything.
I mean, we talked about how it's like one part making a game and one part like storytelling, almost like filmmaking, because the games are there for you to play, but you are piecing it all together in this cohesive story that, like a movie, has ups and downs, it has challenges, it has solutions. So even if you don't know anything about those games, you do kind of get sucked in to just this great story that they're telling. And I think as they are looking at, future, games or companies or people to share their stories through this new medium, like I think they're looking at that too, of like, what kind of story do we have to tell here?
Right. And it's not lost on us that a lot of the people that work there, that are the big creative minds behind it, are from games journalism and games media. So that was their job, is to find the story.
Right.
And they've used those amazing talents to creating this really impressive new genre.
Yeah.
And so, we're so in, and it was really cool. They probably have one of the coolest offices.
It's really, I mean, they have like a full arcade in their office, which is like the first thing you see when you come in. It's like, whoa.
And their studio head is like a prolific collector of all things video games.
They can never move.
Well, no.
They can never move because he has all that stuff in there. Mike Micah, yes.
I could just spend like all day in
Micah's
office, just looking around at all the cool things that he's amassed over, his
now
years.
Now you keep telling me I want you to bring in all of your old stuff.
I want you to.
So that we can, properly display it in here. Which I went through some of it this weekend.
Yeah? How do you feel?
There might be more than you think. I don't know.
Well, we need to get some shelving, but I think that this will be an amazing place to have, and then we can like poke around.
I got my Paper Mario right behind you there. That's hiding out.
You snuck it in.
I snuck it in.
You snuck it in.
I mean, that's just one game, but I got boxes and boxes and boxes because again, my strategy is I get rid of nothing now.
You definitely should bring it in.
Because I have some regrets from the past of getting rid of things.
Yeah.
It's like I'm just not getting rid of anything.
Yeah, most of my stuff is already here, so.
Most of what has survived the trash.
What has survived. Wow. I do have more at home.
The many bloodlettings that you have with games.
My like purging of my all my trash.
I mean, I can see some upside to that. It is a little bit inconvenient to get to some of this stuff because it's like, which box is it? It's like, oh, it's the one at the bottom.
Your mom would be quite happy if you got your stuff out of her house.
I'm talking about the stuff that's at my house.
You have stuff everywhere.
What my mom has, she can keep for a little bit longer.
Your mom is such a saint.
She's got she's got all the old baseball cards and comic books
and she's always
trash.
She's like, I want to.
What's wrong with you?
What if she wants to clean?
She doesn't want to.
Think about your mother.
She doesn't.
We can think about your mother.
We can talk to her later. I think about her daily. Back to Digital Eclipse. So Chris Kohler, who was kind of our guide through this video and the tour, like he also is one of the very long tenured people in games journalism. And he's now, working in development. But he was the one who infamously had the story about Mr. Miyamoto retiring around 10-ish years ago.
There.
I was in the room.
Yeah,
when that happened,
and
we were chatting with him. I was like, it'd be cool if he could come on the podcast and we could do a little back and forth about that because
he's almost ready to tell that story. I think.
That would be a very exciting one.
Yeah,
because that made for some excitement for sure. But then there are a lot of other people who came from journalism. There's one person whose name I shall not mention, who I know works there, who I had an interaction with this is when I was a teenager. So this person used to be with GamePro magazine. And they just had like a job thing open one summer, and it was like, we need somebody to like scour through these Japanese game magazines and pull out little bits of information. And at the time, I was studying Japanese very badly, and I thought, it's like, well, I could maybe figure this out. I'll throw my hat in the ring. Sure, why not? And so GamePro magazine was around here, very close at the time. So like my mom drove me over to GamePro magazine. I did an interview with them. Oh my gosh. And I talked to them and they were like, well, you seem like the perfect fit for this. And this was when I was like 17 or something.
Oh my gosh.
And like, well, you seem perfect for this. And I remember I went on like a summer vacation with my family after that. And the guy was like, yeah, about when you'll get back, like we'll be in touch and we'll, figure out all the details and you can get started.
Oh, cool.
And I spent that whole vacation, I was like so pumped for this. I'm like, this is gonna be incredible. I'm gonna get my foot in the door in the video game industry. Yes. Like this, who knows where this could take me. This is gonna be exciting.
This could be your future
and then I came back and I called up the guy and he was like, oh yeah, we're not gonna do that job anymore. I was so crushed. I was crushed.
Your baby dreams were just crushed?
Yes.
Aw, that's so sad.
I have had that happen to me a couple of times over the years.
Really?
I mean, it's been a while, but...
I can crush your dreams right now.
Do you want to know the other one?
Yeah.
I had another one. So this was when I was in my first job with the agency. We had the client of Namco. This was obviously I later on I worked for Namco, but I was with the PR agency that was representing Namco.
Okay.
And this was a strange situation where I was extremely junior, like I'd worked for like a year or two, but I was somehow leading that account. Don't ask why. This was not good. This was a bad situation.
Wow, you're very capable.
No, this was bad. But they came to like me, and I really liked them, and I really liked Namco. And one of the people who was kind of in charge of that team took me aside, like, we would like to. We have this open position. We'd like to hire you. Like we'd like you to go through the process.
We're not allowed to do that.
But you got the leg up on this. So like if you apply for this, like we can make this happen. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible, because I had wanted to go in-house and get closer to these games and again be closer to how it all happens and be part of that. I was like over the moon. I was so thrilled. I was so excited. But then, as time passed, that is something that you can't do.
You're not allowed to poach from the agency.
There's like contracts in the contract. It's like you can't do that. And again, I was so crestfallen when I learned about that, because I was like, no, this is gonna be such a great move for me. This is gonna be so exciting. This is gonna be so fun. I really worked myself up over this.
Oh no!
And I was really sad.
Eventually it worked out.
I eventually did, right.
Yes.
So shortly after that, I moved on to Konami, and then after that, Namco. So I got there eventually.
On the up and up.
And I had a great time, but that was a really early young kid getting crushed moment.
Early in your career, those things seem like a really big deal.
Right, because how many opportunities are there going to be?
Yes.
Like, I need to jump on this. And make it happen.
And you're very hungry for those kinds of things when you're younger, and you want to do whatever it takes to get to where you
compared to you now
perceive your ultimate goal.
Couldn't care less.
I care so much. I care more than ever. What do you mean? I'm sitting here caring.
You're not hungry at all.
So hungry. Didn't eat breakfast. Sleepy. All sorts of things.
Well, that's enough about me.
Yes.
About you, though.
But anyways, about me.
Now we can talk about you. You have something very exciting happening.
I have something very exciting happening. I am an official pawn in Dragon's Dogma 2. Thank you, Capcom, for choosing yours truly to be an official pawn.
This is exciting. This is great.
So, yes, we're going to film me making the pawn.
Right.
I've submitted a very fun catchphrase for the pawn that I will not spoil here, but if you guys watch the podcast and stuff, there's going to be some fun little inside jokes for all of you.
Good.
But I'm so excited.
It's cool.
It's super cool. My little face was in their showcase.
It's true. You were right there next to your good friend Maximilian Dude and some other great people.
Yes. I was like the sad little girl in the stardom pile, but it was
What?
I didn't know.
You're one of the lucky chosen few. This pawn creator, this character creator thing that they've put out in advance seems to be a big hit.
Oh my gosh, they are so brilliant.
That's a smart move.
To put out this character creator early, but there have been some very terrifying creations. Yes,
abominations.
I saw the worst one. I think was the Pikachu.
The big Pikachu, the humanoid Pikachu.
Woo! That one gave me the.
I didn't love that.
That one was like nightmare fueled, but.
But it's kind of like some of the recreations of real people, like the Timothy Chalamet one. I was like, whoa, that's spot on.
The detail that you can. Really dig into in that character creator is really incredible.
That's good though, because when a big game like that comes out,
the first 2 hours,
you're ready to play, and then you hit the character creator and I want to play, but I also need to do a good job with this.
Yeah.
So you can
Do that early.
You can feel some like friction of like, I just want to start playing. So yeah, it's nice that you can just get that done in advance.
Yes.
And people can check out all the Capcom, because how exactly do people get you? Look at the Capcom materials, because we may not know exactly everything.
But I hope that my pawn is helpful to you in your Dragon's Dogma adventure.
Will I choose your pawn?
Will you?
I don't know.
What a mean thing to say.
Have it walk off the cliff or something.
Oh, you could just throw me.
Whoops.
I might be very helpful to you. You don't know.
Okay.
Or I could be a liability.
We'll see.
Just like in real life.
We'll find out.
Could be helpful or a liability. You don't know. But yes, it's very exciting. I'm super excited to. Should I use my pawn?
But well, I mean, you could make
double Krystas?
You could have a double.
Yeah, like a twinsy.
Or clone army of Krystas.
Oh, that's kind of creepy.
That could be interesting.
That could be
I'm thinking through all the implications now. I don't know if I like this.
I love it.
So, we are just moments away from our great conversation with Stephen Totilo. But first, I gotta shout out our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Raycon.
Thank you, Raycon.
I am one of these people who, when I'm doing little chores around the house, like, doing dishes, taking out the garbage, folding laundry, I'm always listening to a podcast. And these days, I am always listening with my Raycon everyday earbuds. We have had these for about a month or so now. I absolutely love these.
I'm a daily user now.
Yes.
I have basically thrown away all my other earbud and replaced it with my Raycons. They fit in my ear so well. And it feels like I don't need to turn that volume up like super high because it's like sealed in there.
Right.
It's really comfortable.
That is the thing. I also have some like big name, very pricey earbuds that never fit right.
Yeah.
And as a result, I always felt like I was cranking up the volume, which is not good for you.
It's not good.
And these Raycon earbuds, they fit in, they stay in, and you can feel like the audio is going cleanly into your ear.
Totally.
And like when I look at the comparison of the volume, I'm like, wow, this is so low. Like, what was I doing before?
It's not good for your ears.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
But the battery life is great, up to 32 hours, very affordable. Check all the 5-star reviews.
Yes.
If you don't want to take our word for it, but maybe you should. Yes, these are some really great earbuds. So go to buyraycon.com/KitandKrysta today to get 20% off your Raycon order plus free shipping. That's right. You'll get 20% off and free shipping at buyraycon.com/KitandKrysta. Buyraycon.com/KitandKrysta.
We'll put the link right over here and also in the description below.
All right, time for Stephen.
So we're joined today by our very good friend and special guest, Stephen Totilo.
Welcome
to the podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
I'm so happy to be here. It's nice to see you guys again.
Yeah, so I think you are a name that a lot of people who listen to this podcast are familiar with, but they may not know your full story in the industry. So maybe just for starters, could you tell us like how you got started writing about games and some of the places that you've written over the years?
Certainly. And I'll be flattered if any of your audience knows me by name.
Oh, they know you.
They do.
You're infamous.
Well, certainly
infamous.
Oh no. So I've been covering video games as a reporter for over 2 decades. I think the first time I did anything Nintendo related was when I was an intern for Newsweek magazine in 1999. Whoa. Someone recently referred to it as the late 1900s to me. I like that. She's like, "You were born in the late 1900s?" I'm like, "I sure was."
I guess so.
That sounds amazing. And so I got a master's in journalism in 99. I worked for Newsweek. I wrote about, there was a buddy of mine, Guy Kroll, who has moved on to have a successful career in the games industry, was in journalism for a while. And he was writing about the Sega Dreamcast launch, the famous 9999. And we were going to do a sidebar on the rise of the Game Boy. And I think particularly some of the new pushes Nintendo was doing around it. And so I was stunned, and I sort of appreciate this to this day, the sort of privilege that journalists covering games have, because Nintendo, of course, interested in us doing a sidebar in Newsweek, a very big magazine in America at the time, decided they were going to, pull out all the stops to support that. So they sent us a huge box full of Game Boy stuff. And so there was a Game Boy Color and a Game Boy Pocket and a Game Boy printer and a Game Boy camera and all the accoutrement of the Game Boy for this little sidebar I was writing. So that was one of the first things I wrote about. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do with journalism for a while until I kind of gravitated towards a thing I also loved in addition to journalism, which was video games. And so I was freelancing a bit and finally started covering games full time for MTV News for 4 years. Then I was at Kotaku for 11. I ran it for 9 of those years, and certainly covered a lot of Nintendo along the way, also for the New York Times here and there. And then more recently, I left Kotaku in 2021 to join Axios, more of a mainstream news organization. I convinced them to expand into games coverage, something we've seen the Washington Post and other mainstream outlets both flirt with, and then unfortunately at times retreat from. Axios backed what I was doing for a couple of years and then decided to invest elsewhere. So I decided to go independent. And I now have an outlet called GameFile, which you can find at gamefile.news for a thrice weekly newsletter about what's going on in gaming. And at least some of it is free, so you don't have to pay. If you do, thank you. But otherwise, yeah. And along the way, I feel like I've kind of been fortunate enough to tell some of the long form stories of what's happened in gaming. And one of those long form stories is, of course, the ups and downs of Nintendo. And it's, as you both know, it's been a fascinating company to follow. It's a company that's been kind of on the ropes a couple of times seemingly and managed to not just come back, but come back to dominate. And along the way, I was certainly got great opportunities to interview so many Nintendo luminaries, from Mr. Iwata and Mr. Miyamoto, Mr. Onuma, through developers on Splatoon, Animal Crossing, Mario Kart, you name it, as well as some of the more sort of fun side things. I always was really interested in the quirky Nintendo games, so I did a lot about Street Pass games and things like Dylan's Rolling Western and stuff like that. So I've covered a lot, and hungry to continue to do it for a long time. Nintendo's not as easy to get a hold of these days. I think COVID changed a lot. Some of it may be my changing of jobs, but I think COVID changed a lot in terms of game companies in general wanting to work with press, or realizing that, hey, we couldn't work with press during this time and we did okay, so maybe we don't need them as much anymore. And I'm like, no, you need me. I'm sure you need me.
They do. Yeah.
So that's the sweep of it, and I'm sure there's plenty there that we can dig into. But that's my story.
Yeah, you mentioned that big box of Game Boy stuff, and Nintendo's always sending people stuff, whether it's a box of Game Boys or a giant sandwich. We always had something going off into the mail. I want to get into GameFile in a little bit, but when we mentioned...
Can we talk boxes just one more second?
Sandwiches, sure.
No, boxes. Were you either of you there for the launch of the DS?
Yes. Do you have the singing box?
Do you remember this?
Yes.
Oh.
The touching box.
So touching is good. And these are, I don't know if this is coming out well on camera, but these are textured. So this is the most familiar one. It's like AstroTurf.
Yep.
And then this is some sort of polka dot.
It's like a cheese grater.
No, it's rattan. It's like
For
like, it's called cane. It's for like furniture.
Oh, on like a chair. Okay.
I made this box, Steven.
Okay, did you build it? Did you glue this stuff together?
No, I didn't personally glue it, but we work with a company that used to make these media mailings.
Yeah.
And yes, I remember this one.
You kept it after all these years.
I thought you didn't like these mailers. I remember
they're very good. Very good. Yes.
You, sir.
I'm an independent journalist. I can't be bought. So this is so yes, in general, like people will say, oh, we want to send you a physical mailing, especially these days. I'm like, please don't. I have kids. I got enough clutter in the house with all the stuff that they bring into the house. I don't need stuff. But also it was like, it's more transparent sometimes than others about the extent to which it's supposed to sort of grease the wheels of your favor toward a company.
Of course.
Ubisoft, notorious for sending, after Assassin's Creed 3 launched, it was set in America. They sent special, Revolutionary era American flags with a note from the head of marketing of Ubisoft North America saying, "Thank you for your support of our game." And I'm like, I wrote about your game. I don't support your game. Like,
you're waving the flag in the house.
This is interesting because this was sent to me. The launch of the DS coincided with me and my wife going to Tanzania for a Habitat for Humanity build.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was at MTV News at the time, but freelancing. No, I was at VH1 at the time before I was doing games reporting that much, but some freelance, some IGN work and stuff like that. Enough that Nintendo would send me stuff. So we were out building houses for people. and Nintendo sent, amongst other companies, and this was right around like November, so I was missing the big release schedule. So I came back, and game companies would send stuff to the office in VH1 where I worked, and there were piles of it. And I remember this was within the pile, and it was, there was so for those just to kind of who weren't involved in either making or receiving the box, so this was promotional for Nintendo's launch of the Nintendo DS, and what Nintendo was trying to promote at the time was the novelty of touchscreen gaming, which seems ubiquitous right now because everybody plays games on their phones. But it was super weird and exotic that you were going to be playing games where you were touching the screen. Like you just didn't touch the screen. Like you didn't touch your TV when you were playing games.
Touching is good as like that whole marketing campaign. There was some questionable imagery around that whole thing that ended up in like magazines and stuff like that. That was like a little bit like
a little risque for Nintendo, right?
Yeah, but it was like the theme of the entire campaign. That's so funny.
Well, you just made Krysta's day because like the amount of effort that went into making some of those mailers was borderline ridiculous for something that somebody might just be like, throw this away.
I should say, by the way, helped hold a lot of stuff.
It held the
so
stuff
I got the import version of WarioWare Twisted.
Oh, nice.
I have what else did I have in here that was good? What is this? Kirby Tilt and Tumble. I had to hold on to that. Although a lot of these old cartridges with sensors don't work anymore. So like the WarioWare Twisted doesn't have the click anymore when I twist, which was like really the best part of that game. So it's like a good
just
storage
use it as
box.
storage. I love it. Yeah, it has a function still. I'm glad. It's awesome.
All right, sorry, Kit, I derailed you. What do you want to talk about?
Well, so we mentioned to some of our community that you were going to be on, and a lot of them first knew you with Kotaku, where you, at the time, Kotaku had such a different style from any other outlet. So
that's a nice way of putting it.
They specifically wanted to ask, like, how did you balance the need, or I don't even know if you felt it was a need, like maintaining relationships with game companies with the style of Kotaku at that time?
While doing sensationalized clickbait, is that what they were saying we were doing? So I joined. As I mentioned, I had a graduate. I went to graduate school for journalism. Always have taken reporting extremely seriously. It is the only profession that is sort of given special recognition and dispensation in the Bill of Rights. So in this country, we don't say anything about doctors or lawyers in the Constitution, but we grant the press, the freedom of the press in the Bill of Rights. And so, you go to journalism school, you come out of it with a sense of like the importance of this. And that's why, even though I loved video games since I was a kid, I didn't think that games were something that was serious enough for me to apply this, sort of expensively gained training about journalism on. So I kind of did other things for a while and then gravitated back toward it because I was pretty dissatisfied with the way the games were being reported on. And I was like, my would-be eventual wife was like, why don't you do this? You're not happy with the journalism that's being done by games. Why don't you do it? And so I sort of like, okay, that's a great idea. Why don't I do that? And she's very smart. So I did original reporting for MTV News. They basically knew they should do gaming things, gaming coverage, but they didn't know what they should do. And so they let me have carte blanche and write about whatever I wanted to write about. And so you have the name of MTV behind you, the promise of potentially bringing a camera crew, although very little ever made it on air. It was mostly for the written stuff for the internet. You can get a lot of access. And then I had questions to ask that were maybe sometimes a little bit beyond just the talking points of the promotional campaign or whatever, and it wasn't like the edgiest of stuff, but I think I sort of stood out from my peers of doing more original reporting. So Kotaku and companies at Gawker Media in general, when I was joining, those blogs, the Gawker Media blogs, Gawker, Gizmodo, Deadspin, Kotaku, were known for a lot of snark, a lot of kind of re-angling what other people were reporting, not known for their own original reporting. Blog was sometimes seen as a shorthand for you're not doing your own work, you're riffing off of somebody else's. It's heavily opinion-based and what have you. I think that's an oversimplification, but it's definitely true that there was a move towards more original reporting. So when I joined Kotaku, I was specifically hired by Brian Crescente, the then editor-in-chief, to do original reporting, to bring the original reporting that I was doing at MTV News, that kind of thing. Frankly, a lot of the reporting that Kotaku was aggregating, some of it was a, if you can't beat him, join him kind of thing in terms of me moving over there, which is that I'm interviewing all these luminaries and all these interesting figures in gaming for MTV News. MTV, because it's mostly interested, believe it or not, in music or even movie coverage, didn't really give a lot of space to my games coverage. So I got recognition for what I was doing, but I didn't feel like the company I worked for was able to give it enough play. Kotaku and Joystick would aggregate so much of it and get so much traffic out of it. I'm like, I'm just going to join them. So I go there, and I had that same backing to do original reporting. And so I sort of took the same approach. I didn't have the MTV cameras with me anymore, but I still had that sense of, you should talk to me. Of course you should talk to me. It's going to be worth your while. Maybe not every question is going to be the question you want to have asked, but ultimately in aggregate, you will appreciate it. The readers will see this as a real interview. You'll have that authenticity that comes out of that. And so that was always my thing, is that I said, look, people trust us, right? There's always Kotaku haters, sure, but people trust us, and they didn't feel we were, rarely, if ever, accused of being co-opted by kind of corporate gaming or anything. We were seen for a long time as being extremely independent. And so if we pissed you off as a company, that was, my argument was, that's all the more reason for you to work with us in terms of making your people available to us, because it's going to be seen as real. It's going to be seen as something authentic, because people aren't going to think that we were, seduced by your swag mailing or whatever else. And so that was my approach. When I joined Kotaku, I definitely heard from people in the industry who were disappointed that I went there. I felt like it's too, of a I don't know, lowbrow publication for me to join. And I'm like, whatever. I respect a lot of the people here, and I'm happy to work with them and be the deputy editor, which is what I joined as. But yeah, there were times we got blacklisted by Bethesda and Ubisoft. They got pissed off at us over things. Sony had blacklisted Kotaku a while back. Prior to that, all those things eventually melted away in some shape or form. The Bethesda one, maybe not so much. I think Bethesda might still blacklist Kotaku 3 ESCs later.
Oh yeah, but they like to blacklist a lot of people, so it's not just Kotaku.
Right. But that was it. And then also, like, you just have relationships. So like, I interviewed Mr. Iwata for the first time at New York Times, and I don't think I had that he necessarily even knew who I was or knew my name, but certainly the folks who would facilitate interviews with him knew who I was. And so, I interviewed him for the New York Times in 2004. I interviewed him for MTV News in 2005 or 6. And so by the time I'm at Kotaku and I'm asking for an interview with Mr. Iwata, it's at least within the realm of possibility because I have the track record. And eventually I was able to interview him a third time. Reggie Fils-amie, who everybody, watching this and listening to this knows, he's somebody that I talked to extensively at MTV. We kind of started at a similar time in terms of our respective runs. Me as a journalist, him at having moved from non-gaming professions over to Nintendo. So I think maybe there was a sort of sense of kind of kinship and pathway. So I joined Kotaku, and he may have never spoken to Kotaku before. I never really checked, but he and I spoke like every 6 months officially, on the record for an interview. It was very natural for that kind of thing to continue. So that's an unfortunately long-winded way of addressing that question, but that's basically how it was. And I think people just kind of sized me up, especially once I was EIC, industry people, as somebody who is going to be, very straightforward and blunt, maybe to a fault at times, but with a huge audience behind us, it's kind of impossible to ignore about what we were doing.
So now you have GameFile. We've gone independent like us. Mm-hmm. What are your goals with GameFile? And I guess, like, what kind of stories are you most interested in telling at this point in your career?
Still, my main goal is to just be able to do the work that I love for as long as I can. And my profession is not the games industry; it is the journalism industry, and the journalism industry is a fraught and imperiled industry. I think, arguably more so than gaming, which has its own undulations, and unfortunately, so many people in gaming have been laid off of late. But I believe in the games industry's potential to rebound, people winding up at new studios and what have you. Media, it isn't as certain that it rebounds from a continued decay of financial support for media institutions. So you see more and more newspapers closing around the country throughout every year. You see the consolidation of even large media companies, and you see the moments when a Washington Post or an Axios begin to consider expanding into games coverage. You see how fleeting that can be. The Washington Post decides they need to do cuts. What do? They cut their games team and their Washington Post for Kids team and make some sort of, almost like a ceremonial, 20-person headcount cut. Can't imagine that's a meaningful thing to a company, that's owned by Jeff Bezos. But they do that because it's an easy thing, and because a lot of publications these days, when they expand into games coverage, they expect it to pay for itself. Washington Post launcher vertical started with this 1 year a sponsorship from an insurance company. Axios launched its newsletter around gaming that, again, I pitched them on doing, with some sponsorships, in the bank, ready to go. And I think there's an assumption and expectation, and it's not unreasonable, that if we're going to have this expenditure on games coverage, we need to see it immediately come back. And there's not the confidence or faith in these large media companies that the readers in general care about video games. We're all adults and care about games. A lot of people following Kit and Krysta are also adults and are into games, and just sort of take it that this is part of lives and part of our interests, and it's normal and it's natural. But these big media companies often seem to think, well, no, we can't just employ somebody to cover games because we know it's for the greater good and that our general readership will care about it. No, this must be this is a specific thing that has to prove itself on its own grounds. So Axios got out of the games coverage business, at least for full-time business. I really appreciate the opportunity they gave me to kind of return to being a reporter after being an editor-in-chief for a while and being a little bit removed from writing many stories myself. But in so doing, I recognized I had an opportunity to take the newsletter that I was writing for Axios and say, if you like this, it can continue. You can still read it. I might need some help financially, though, in order to keep doing it. And so GameFile is free on Mondays. The editions on Wednesdays and Fridays are paid. I currently publish on Substack. I can go to other platforms if need be. And they take 10%. My payment company, Stripe, takes 3%. The other 87% goes to me. If you do the math on a $10 a month or $100 a year subscription, you can figure out what it would take to get to a full-time, what would be a reasonable full-time wage for a person living in the New York metropolitan area with 2 kids. And so that's what my target is to be able to make a living doing the work that I love, and in the process continue to tell interesting stories about the culture and business of video games. Currently, I mix a few things. I like talking to people in sort of anywhere that interesting things are happening in gaming, which is very broad, but you'll see interviews with, I just did an interview with people at Hasbro because they're building up what they're doing with gaming after Monopoly Go and Baldur's Gate 3 blew up. Did an interview with Phil Spencer recently, the head of Xbox, about what's going on with Microsoft and Xbox, and were they getting out of consoles, and were they going third party and all that, which of course they weren't. Have an interview that I haven't run yet. It may run by the time. Oh no, I think it'll not run for another week or so. With the composer of the Mario movie, I talked to him back in Las Vegas last month. I had a fun conversation. So it's sort of the people I find who are interesting. I like to do a lot of interviews. And I mix into that writing about my kids, playing games with my kids, which has been very Nintendo centric, since that's the go-to system for parents when you're trying to avoid Roblox and we take them into the world of the Switch first. And so yes, it's very very broad. It's a lot of it is what I find interesting. And so it's a mix. It's business coverage, it's culture coverage. It's what I hope to provide to people, a cheat sheet of what's going on in gaming. And so you can get a synopsis of a lot of things plus original reporting mixed in, and hopefully relevant to what I think people here most care about. I'll be able to continue telling stories related to Nintendo as much as possible, as elusive as those folks might sometimes be. I did get to ask one question of Koji Kondo when he was receiving a Hall of Fame award and getting entered into at the DICE Awards in Las Vegas last month. I asked him if he had any inspiration for young composers of games. And he says to a translator, like, who am I to give advice to young composers? I'm like, dude, you're Koji Kondo.
You're you.
I mean, who else?
He is so humble. Yeah, it's so like him to answer like that.
Right. He said, for those who may not have seen it, to basically that you should listen to as much music as possible, different kinds of music, and you should play as many kinds of music as possible, which tracks, because if you are familiar with Koji Kondo's compositions, they are fairly eclectic in terms of the kinds of music that they riff off of.
Yeah.
Now I remember, I think one of the early stories you ran, and we've been subscribers for a long time, so we definitely agree like with your style, and it's definitely filling already like a niche that is not out there yet, which is really cool.
Thank you.
I remember I think you ran some previously unused content from like an interview that you did with, I believe, Mr. Iwata, which kind of led us to believe to ask this question, because we were also talking recently to somebody who had been in games journalism for a long time. They're like, I'm just sitting on a lot of like untranscribed interviews, or just a lot of content that necessarily hasn't gotten out there. Like only bits and pieces of it got out there. So like, are you sitting on some goldmine of content of all these old interviews or conversations or things that have not completely run yet?
I am not sure. I don't know. So when I was going to leave Kotaku, I had some thoughts in mind of going independent, and I decided not to. I preferred Axios, and there were I had some other opportunities, but I preferred the security of a guaranteed paycheck at the time. You know, as guaranteed as any paycheck is. But I considered it because I thought I have this reservoir of old interviews. If how am I going to sell doing like my own thing? Do people know me enough? People knew my name more when I was at MTV News, at Kotaku certainly, but people began to associate Kotaku with Jason Schreier or Cecilia D'Anastasio or Tim Rogers' videos or what have you, and some of the other work, Joshua Rivera's criticism, Gita Jackson, so many other terrific writers that we had on staff, and I was like, I don't know if people know me enough, but I've been doing this a long time. How do I turn that into an asset? And I had all these micro cassettes, right? Because the very first interviews I did, how long ago did this go? The late 1900s. I wasn't doing digital recording. So now I record everything on my phone, right? There's just like a voice memo thing on my phone. Before that, it was a little looks like I guess like the shape of a cigarette lighter or something like that.
Yeah.
That you take apart and you jack the USB as a USB thing, you jack in your computer, and it's a digital recording file, right? Digital recorder. Before that, it was small, black rectangular box with a micro cassette, and it's reeling the tape through. And I had this pile of tapes. I thought there must be great stuff on it. I should work with some of that. And I didn't even. The time I was thinking of leaving Kotaku and doing this was also the pandemic. I didn't have access to the tapes because we kind of relocated for a bit. Long story slightly shorter. The Axios thing was the way to go, and I put that in the back of my mind. Axios, when they let me know that they weren't going to continue the gaming newsletter, was last summer. They gave me like a 4-month off ramp, which was nice, and I can continue to do my newsletter. So I had a lot more time to prepare. So I began to pull these tapes out. I listened to some of them. I had gone through some follies trying to find a tape recorder that worked. To my horror, I had already read recently that a couple of years ago that these tapes might decay after 15 to 20 years. And
Scan them now.
Some of the tapes do emit only a high-pitched, shrill sound, but most of them have played when I've turned them on. Good. But what I have found is that I'm listening to an old interview with Mr. Miyamoto or something, and I'm like, there's good stuff in here, and I'm transcribing or I'm actually recording it to my phone, and then I'm putting my phone into an AI-driven transcriber online or whatever. So I'm not typing the whole thing out. And then I'm going back over it, and I'm like, there's good stuff here. Let me Google for this to see if I wrote this. Because when you write thousands of articles, as I have, you don't remember a lot of what you wrote until somebody reminds you. And it turns out I used a lot of it because, and I don't know about this other journalist you were talking to, but in my career, I've been fortunate to have immense editorial freedom and immense space, endless space, because I've written mostly for online publications. So the interview with Satoru Iwata that you referenced, Kit, was on a microcassette. It was an interview I did for the New York Times, which was and is a print-based publication. This article could only be so long. I interviewed about 10 other people about this for the launch of the Nintendo DS. So we go back to the DS stuff again. And it might even be 20 other interviews. So I only used 2 quotes. So this is a rare interview from my past, where not only is it with an interesting figure people would still appreciate hearing from now, but it's also a rare interview where I wasn't writing it for a place where I would have used all the good stuff already. And so these aforementioned other interviews, like with Mr. Miyamoto, what have you, like there was a Star Fox Wii U one. And I'm like, that game was pretty random. I wonder what we talked about. And I listened back to it. I'm like, this is really interesting what he's saying about this game. And then I Google, and I'm like, I used all of that across 2 articles on Kotaku. So a lot of my stuff was used by me for Kotaku, for MTV News, for other outlets. I do have a certain amount of microcassettes. The thing that unfortunately I don't have, because I also realize, I don't know if I'm supposed to admit this, but whatever, is I still have some of the videotapes or beta tapes of the on-air interviews, the camera interviews that we did at MTV News. But what I realized, because I kept going, I'm like, well, I borrowed somebody's recording device to kind of play back these tapes. And I'm like, why am I not finding the good stuff? Like, where's the Hideo Kojima interview I did in his work apartment in Roppongi in Tokyo with scans of his brain behind him? Why? Where is that one? and after like a few of those instances, I realized, oh, all the best ones that we probably actually used were probably taken from my desk to wherever they edited the videos in the MTV News office. And what I was left with was the stuff that wasn't good enough to use. And in there, like I found some stuff, like there's some B-roll of like going to Retro Studios lobby and Sway, the on-air host from MTV News at the time, doing like his opening bit before we go into a news package about talking to Retro Studios. But it's like it's him in the Retro Studios lobby, like
the most famous lobby in the industry.
Yeah,
it was the bad takes that they didn't use. So I thought we had filmed Richard Garriott rapping. But I couldn't find. I can't find that tape. So again, I'm like, I think the best stuff was kept by MTV News. So I wish, but no.
So you mentioned kind of your changing relationship with Nintendo and kind of the shift that happened around the pandemic. Like generally speaking, though, are game companies treating you differently now that you've gone independent and you're building your own audience?
I wouldn't say that anybody's treating me significantly differently from going independent, Nintendo included. I would say that with Nintendo, and to some extent with others, I do feel like there was a thing that happened maybe going into the pandemic where already some companies, maybe familiarity was breeding contempt for some, or just the sense of, look, as you guys know, it used to be that the gaming press, the so-called enthusiast press, were the main thing that you might court if you're on the comm side in terms of getting the word out, right? You want to have word of mouth, you want to have regular gamers talking about what you're doing, but you get the enthusiast press talking. And when influencers became more influential, right? The rise of the influencer, I think, displaced the utility of the games press, because the games press in a way was, I think, maturing professionally. I don't even necessarily mean attitudinally, but in terms of just a lot of games journalists aren't trained, their editors aren't trained. So people are kind of figuring out how to do journalism on the fly in games journalism a lot. And bit by bit, I think collectively you saw a leveling up, pardon the cheesy gaming pun, of the quality of journalism, the toughness of questions, the diligence in doing follow-ups, the literacy of understanding financial reports, all of that type of thing. That happened. And so you wound up with a gaming press corps that was a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more into, I think, the complexities of what's happening, and not just kind of happy to be there and happy to enthuse about games. There's a place for enthusiasm. It's helpful for people to understand what's cool and exciting and amazing about games that are coming out and that are being debuted. But that role, I think, more and more got taken up by the influencer, a person most likely with a YouTube channel or a Twitch stream. And so what I would notice would be at Kotaku was that there were fewer and fewer slots available for us to go to events. Oh, this is an influencer event. Or we would hear after the fact the influencers went to this thing. We also got a little bit more out of the business of doing previews, because it used to be more commonplace that there were 2-3 preview beats, sometimes all events. And it's like, no, we only need to tell people about a game once before it comes out, because we at Kotaku were shifting more towards covering games after they're released. It's more commonplace these days as more and more games are live service that you report on what's happening a week or a month after a game comes out. But it was more rare when we began to shift toward that about a decade ago at Kotaku. So we were kind of moving away from needing to talk to the games companies. And the game companies, I think, were moving a little bit away towards needing to talk to us. When you got closer to the pandemic, I noticed that sort of maybe reaching a critical mass. And then, well, the end of E3, and really the E3 has kind of been over for like several years, has been disappointing for a lot of people in terms of not being able to vicariously experience the hype of all of these new announcements. The end of E3 for me, the disappointment was the lack of this moment to physically be proximate to all of these figures in the industry who otherwise you're probably not going to be around. And Nintendo is kind of the apotheosis of that, because Nintendo, like a Disney or something, likes to project this idea that kind of their work is created by magic, right? It's created by Nintendo. You can look today to see how hard it's been for people to figure out who's making the newest Princess Peach game. And you had a data miner going into the demo and noticing a code name that matches the code names that Goodfeel used. So, aha, it's Goodfeel. Like, that's how you find out. Because Nintendo likes to project. It's just kind of the Nintendo magic, right? Like, yes, they'll do the Q&As with their devs, the Iwata Asks interviews. But overall, to the masses, they just want to project this sense. So they're not really super invested, I found, in, okay, we want to be there for all the preview beats. We want to be there to talk to you about everything. But there was this one time a year in June in Los Angeles where Nintendo had to put all this money into having a booth because you needed to show up and it needed to have a presence comparable to other companies, right? And you needed to fly in the developers. And you guys probably can fill in some of the blanks here or correct me where I'm wrong. But you need to fly in the top people from Nintendo because they need to be there to be on stage to show games. And they need to meet with some retailers and buyers and all that. So those people can be wooed into understanding why this Wii, game is the new Wii Fit or whatever. And it's the next thing to care about. And when you have an expensive booth and you have people in town from Japan and they're going to be there for a few days, you have to justify what they're doing. You have to fill their schedule. So who do you fill their schedule with? Me. So people like me as reporters get interview slots. And when an E3 goes away and a Nintendo or a Sega or a Konami or any of these other companies, particularly the ones in Japan where like wrapping stuff in the US is going to be less common, when they don't have an event like this, then that whole system, none of which is to me nefarious or anything like that. It's just like sort of, it is all very logical about how it works as a business. When those events don't happen, when those opportunities don't happen, yes, you in theory could, in lieu of that, set up video chats with whichever developers you want and the press of your choice. But you don't have to. It doesn't really, like, the currents of the situation don't really facilitate that. And so with the lack of E3 and with the pandemic in general erasing a lot of those physical events, I found, far fewer opportunities. Companies recognize, well, people, even our developers probably have lives and safety concerns over making half-hour time for a Zoom call. But there was just like less of a momentum toward doing that type of thing. And that's continued afterward, as I was alluding to before, where I just feel like companies and studios don't feel like it's as necessary to make those connections or to do those conversations. So there's just less of that. You see it on the executive level as well. I used to always, without much effort, was able to line up, the CEO of EA, the head of whatever company. Those are easy gets as long as I was from a publication that they'd heard of, and then I had that momentum of a reporter relationship. I haven't seen Andrew Wilson, CEO of EA, do an interview with somebody other than a financial news reporter on CNBC in years. Like, he just doesn't do it, and a lot of them just became averse to, like, oh yeah, the gaming press are going to ask us questions that we might not have an easy answer to. We're just not going to talk as much. Doug Bowser certainly gives far fewer interviews than Reggie Fils-amie. Take it back to Nintendo. Reggie, when I talked to him, it was always very obvious that we were in the sport of what can he tell me that's not going to get him in trouble with HQ and CL, right? And I think he enjoyed that, sort of being up to that line. But I'm sure HQ would maybe have been fine with like him not doing the interviews, maybe. And so, we see Nintendo can still get its message out, but it has less risk involved. EA has less risk involved by not putting their execs out. I would argue, I'm a biased journalist in this sense, where I'm going to argue that journalism is sitting with a reporter is ultimately to your benefit. But a lot of them are more about, it's just a random thing that we can't control for. And so, I'm still able to line up tons of interviews. I've interviewed execs from Sony PlayStation, Xbox. And like I said, I interviewed Koji Kondo, interviewed 9 people from Insomniac Games while I was at the DICE event, the DICE Awards in Vegas. GameFile is not hurting for interviews because there's so many interesting people to talk to on the industry side as well as on the gamer side. But the access is limited. And the part that bums me out is that I really liked being able to tell the stories of some of the more obscure works of companies like Nintendo. And one of the cool things was, I think because I was at Kotaku, the math on Nintendo's side was, yeah, he's asking about this random ass game, but getting this random ass game talked about in front of of all of the Kotaku audience is going to be good for us in some way. So again, the Street Pass games, the Dylan's Rolling Westerns of the world, the Box Boys of the world, Nintendo would be like, just send us 10 questions. We'll do it over email. But I had, I felt like I was able to chronicle the stories of like Nintendo's like C-list games, which often to me were the most interesting and creative things that the company was putting out of. Now that I'm at an outlet that I'm building, it's a harder argument to say make it worth your while. But also you'll notice fewer of those games exist. Fewer of those games come out of Nintendo. Fewer of those games come out of a lot of companies. So it's maybe an opportunity that couldn't exist because there's just not as much of that there.
You have definitely had a unique relationship with Nintendo over the years and have just had a presence within the company, like in the minds of the communications team constantly over the years. And one of my enduring memories of you when I was at Nintendo, I think it was 2012, just prior to the Wii U launch, we had a dinner where we invited some media to come, and Reggie was there, and the communications team was there.
Yes.
And there were probably 25, 30 people at this dinner. It was a big dinner.
Jeff Keighley was there.
I don't know how it got started, but you and Reggie started on one of your verbal sparring matches about the Nintendo practice of installing the hardware, like drilling it into somebody's desk. And this was like
literally drilling.
This was like a 15-minute back and forth where, again, it was very good spirited, but you two were really going at it. And Reggie loved stuff like that. And everybody's just like put down their forks and just watched. And I remember our boss at the time, I just looked at his face, which was white ashen. As a ghost.
Yeah. He was,
do you remember
mortified.
this?
I remember. So this was the eve of the midnight launch. Of
yes.
Wii U.
Yes.
Yeah,
that was
that was a really interesting time. I thought you were going to mention one of my. I was thinking before this my most embarrassing Nintendo interview moments, and one of them is Wii U related. Let me take a very quick tangent to mention this. This is E3. I have an interview with Reggie. He has a prototype Wii U in his second floor interview suite room, whatever. And I go up there, and I'm still at the time using a pen and notepad for interviews. And I don't realize that my pen has exploded, and he hands me the white Wii U prototype.
Oh my gosh!
Handling it, like looking for like.
I haven't heard this one before.
And like I hand it back to him, and it's covered in ink now, and I'm like horrified. And we're on the clock. I only have so much time for an interview, and I'm like, oh my god, I've just destroyed this prototype with my inky hands.
Your fingerprints are all over it.
yeah. So that was not good. But yes, so this dinner. So Jeff Keighley invited me to go to the dinner because he was there. He'd pal around with Reggie a fair amount. I was home when Jeff told me this. I'd gone home from work, and I was using my new Wii U, which Nintendo had sent me earlier in the day, or maybe the day before. Nintendo had said, we are going to hook you up with a development unit because at the time, if you wanted to be able to play pre-release games for consoles, you had to have a specialized unit. And this was commonplace in the world of PlayStation and Xbox, where a generation or two prior, even I would have a secondary PS3 that would say have the word test on it, or I'd have a dark gray Xbox 360 with an extra kind of bunch of plastic at the top. And these devices were, you could put a pre-release disc in and it would play the game. Bear in mind, everything's disc-based at the time. And Nintendo did not do this. Nintendo, which was primarily selling first-party games anyway, and not interested in supplying those first-party games super early or have like preview builds, didn't really care about facilitating this. I think there was very few people that had like what was like a Wii reader or whatever it was called, right? But things were going to change for the Wii U era, right? Third parties were going to be supported, and to support third parties and the kinds of things they want, Nintendo was going to supply me with a special pre-release Wii U, and that pre-release Wii U was going to be brought to my office by a Nintendo official, and he showed up with a backpack, and when he took the backpack off and didn't just take out the special Wii U, but a power drill in the offices of Kotaku, and he was prepared to drill
involved too.
Into the furniture. Did you say chains?
Yeah, there was like there used to be like a metal bicycle.
It's very medieval,
and it would be like chained to. We had it chained to our desks too.
That might have still been in his bag, but I.
You were like, please don't drill into my desk.
We floated around from seat to seat. Gawker Media was known as a buccaneering independent production publication, right, and media company. And we were not. I was not going to tell my boss, Nick Denton, the owner of the company, that I was consenting to have somebody who we cover drill into our office furniture. And this is probably the thing that I told Reggie at the dinner. So there was already that in my mind, and the guy's like, I got to call my people. Maybe he was calling you guys. I don't know. And he was basically told he had to leave with the power drill and the Wii U. And like, he's like, it said here in the paperwork that we needed it to be in a secure place. I'm like, buddy, secure place means I'll lock it in a closet over there. I'm not letting you drill into my desk. But that was what it was going to be. And so I'm like, sorry, this is not going to happen. And I don't let people I cover alter the office furniture. It's just the policy. It's maybe not written down anywhere because I hadn't anticipated it, but I'm not going to change it. And then I'm home with the retail Wii U that you guys had supplied. And the weird thing about the retail Wii U was that stuff was kind of weird about it, right? Like, they didn't mention when promoting the Wii U that it took a minute to boot up, right?
Or not at all.
They didn't mention.
Nobody needs to know that.
You didn't mention that when I was closing down one game, that to load up the next game was going to take like 45 seconds. All these weird pauses made all the more awkward by the fact that Mr. Iwata, when he'd been talking about the Wii channels and how he really liked having a weather channel and a news channel on the Wii, that with the Wii U, it was going to be even smoother. And it was going to be like, you're going to be flicking through all these different applications. The opposite was the case. For whatever reason, the operating system of the Wii U, especially prior to whatever initial patches they did in the first month of release, was the slowest performing operating system I've ever experienced prior or since of a game console. So I'm home. Like, what's going on? This is not a Nintendo device like I've ever experienced before. Is there something busted with my unit? Maybe I need to drill it into the desk for it to work better.
That'll fix it.
So Jeff is like, come out to this dinner. And I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting.
I'm mad now.
So I go out there and I'm like, I'm at the dinner, like not thinking that the topic of conversation is going to be this. I'm like, that's going to be kind of awkward to talk about how there's some like serious red flags about this system. And so I don't remember if it was Jeff or Reggie or Bill Trimmon or Mark Franklin or whoever was there that I was trying to like be like, did your Wii U also take forever to boot up? And so I'm trying to figure that out. And then, yes, at some point it becomes a, why are you asking me to bolt this Wii U? Like, why are you? And I was like, nobody else asks me to do this. And I think a Nintendo comms person said, well, we're not any other company. And they're like, why can't you agree to it? And I'm like, well, I'm not any other journalist. That was our impasse.
And off we go.
Yeah, but it went on. It went on for quite a long time.
It was entertaining.
And then Jeff, Reggie, and I walked over to the Nintendo World Store to, I guess, greet people that were camped out.
See the line.
Yeah, the
midnight
line.
Launch. I think there were some other people sort of with us, but it was the three of us. I think, as is always the case in Reggie's life, there was somebody hounding him over why some game wasn't being localized. It was not Mother 3 in that case. I feel like it might have been. Was it Retro Game Challenge 2? That's what my mind is telling me.
There's always something.
Yeah.
But
the
there
game
was
that
something.
millions want.
So what so that was it. Like I gave as good as I got, and it wasn't enough for Reggie to not, want to go over the midnight launch with me. But I don't know, maybe that's why I haven't chatted with Doug Bowser that much since then.
Nah, it's not you. It's NCL. Don't worry.
Now, you also had an interesting place in the Nintendo communications team where we would do these, in-depth training sessions to get ready for an E3 or a big show.
Yeah.
And these would involve us, sitting down in front of a camera and doing these like faux interviews. We would get fake interviewed, and then somebody would critique it and be like, play it back. Be like, well, you could have answered this better, or you should have done this.
Yeah, or don't say that, frame it this way.
And it would always culminate in like the super hard mode of like, okay, now I'm going to be Steven Totilo and I'm going to go for your throat. And this involved like asking like the most random out there questions, like just brushing off, like disrespectfully brushing off what you were saying, interruptions, like you name it.
Wait, that's what I was known for.
Steven, he's not like that.
Okay, very nice. But there was some cult understanding within Nintendo. I'm not sure if you know this, but like you were like the interview boss mode, basically.
Right.
For some reason, because
it was scary to talk to you. It was built up.
Not
that
for
way.
us. I don't think you're scary. I think you're great.
You're very nice.
But people were legitimately like I think it's because they, really respected your like actual commitment to journalism.
Well, I think it's also like a lot of the questions or the responses that like were prepared within PR, like they're effectively non-answers.
Yeah.
But there was kind of like PR often answers. An unspoken rule of like, I'll give you this non-answer and we'll move on. But you wouldn't do that. You would keep picking at it because like that's obviously not the answer.
You're a journalist.
Can we get to a real answer?
Of course. Yes. I mean, that's great. I mean, those allude to my better moments. I mean, I have my worst moments, like the ink stain Wii U moment. So like there's, if the boss mode of interviews is the person who's, dabbing your console with ink, you're probably going to be doing okay. But yeah, I mean, it was always fascinating and great to talk to, the developers on all of Nintendo's games. And one of the interesting things, again, about talking to Japanese devs is that they've been at their companies on average a super long time. So if you're talking to somebody from Square Enix or Nintendo or, any of these sort of the companies that type Konami, oftentimes you can check their credits on Moby Games or something like that. And you'll find, this person I'm speaking to also worked on this Super Nintendo game that, they probably haven't talked about or been asked about questions, about ever. And if they were, they're all, lost to print publications or something like that. So it was always fun to prep for an interview with a Nintendo dev, being able to look back on what they had worked on in the past and say, okay, well, we're talking about this, but what about this other game? One of the things I like to cite a lot is the aside that I had with Mr. Miyamoto when we were ostensibly interviewing about Pikmin 3, the initial time Pikmin 3 was coming out for the Wii U, right? Yeah. And we were, I asked him why he was so confident the game would be good, because he was kind of being boastful a bit in the interview, which was a bit uncharacteristic of him. And I'm like, how do you know it's going to be so good? And he's like, because I'm experienced making games. Like, I know when a game is going to be good. And I'm like, have you ever known that a game was going to be bad? And he said, yes. And I was like, again, sort of thinking on my feet as part of what I'm supposed to do in these interviews. So I'm like, wait, when did you think a game was going to be bad? Have you ever released a bad game? And he said, I have. And I'm like, what's the bad game? And I was hoping for, possibly a juicier answer than this, but it was the Famicom Disk System version of Zelda 2, because it had long load times. Don't tell him about the Wii U operating system.
I thought you were going to say that was the Star Fox Zero interview that you were looking at.
Yeah, that game's not great.
Might have two.
No, it was so he was so that was the kind of those things were interesting asides to have somebody talk about, but you got to think on your feet. And I will share a completely embarrassing moment of this, which was definitely not boss mode and Steve Totilo for sure. But I'm interviewing Kosuke Tanabe. Mr. Tanabe, as you both know, worked with a ton of development studios, particularly the partner studios or non-Japan NCL studios. Was the main producer and I believe all the Metroid Prime games.
Next level games, yeah.
Right, Next Level. So we were doing an interview about Metroid Prime Federation Force, the 3DS game that nobody wanted because people wanted another Metroid Prime, not a co-op mech game sort of in the world of Metroid, right? Very loosely. So usually, probably one of the things I was known for was going overtime in all my interviews because I'd come in with a million questions and try to seize the moment of having this rare access to these folks. And this was a rare instance where I had so few questions about this game that had barely been shown, and he was not very forthcoming about what was interesting about it. I don't know either. I was probably failing to mask my own personal disappointment, which I try to set aside in interviews. But personal disappointment, it wasn't exactly something I was excited about. And so I recognize on my clock that it's like I've got 10 minutes to go, and I'm like, what do I do to fill this time? And I'm like, I did not at the time go into that interview, I think, with the sort of, okay, he's worked on these other games in the past, I can kind of pivot to this kind of thing. And I just felt like there was a little bit of like iciness in the interview, which was also pretty unusual. I felt bad about it. And I'm like, I know how I'll warm this up. I'll ask a fun off-the-wall question that will flatter this man. So I, again, have not done my research to this particular topic, but I think on my feet, and I hear in my head a memory resurfacing from like 10, 15 years ago, whenever it was that I last played 1080 snowboarding on my Nintendo 64. And I say to Kosuke Tanabe, it's so interesting that you have the same name as one of the snowboarders in 1080 snowboarding. And it's translated, and there's silence, and it's awkward. And I begin to realize that perhaps he does not have the same name as any snowboarders in 1080 snowboarding. And as I'm sure my face is turning red, I excuse myself to take my phone out to double check the cast of 1080 Snowboarding, because I can hear this announcer from the game saying Kensuke Tanabe in my head every time I played it. But in fact, it was the announcer was saying Kensuke Kamichi? Or Kamachi? I think it was Kamachi. And it's not Tanabe. And it doesn't sound anything like it. It doesn't write anything like it. And I was trying not to be like subconsciously racist or something. And I was just trying to think on my feet. And I'm like, oh my God, what do I say to this man who I have basically just said all Japanese names might as well be the same to me? Because for some reason I am randomly bringing up that I have mistaken your name for the name of a Japanese snowboarder from 1080 Snowboarding. Definitely the lowest moment in my interviewing of Nintendo people. And I'm just trying to he already probably thinks that I'm like a complete jerk because I have not given him a very warm interview about Metroid Prime Federation Force. And I was just trying to find a fun thing to end this conversation on. And I've just
everybody gets a mulligan when Federation Force is involved.
That's true. Yeah. You should have asked him about Baby Metal. That would have got him going. That's his favorite thing. Baby
Metal. It's an all-girl Japanese metal band. Ask him about that.
Next time you see him, I'm going to give you
have a good in
your pocket so that you can right the wrong that you did.
So terrible.
So many years.
So terrible.
To wrap us up, I'm curious for your big picture thoughts on like where Nintendo's next year could lead them, because they're in this interesting spot where they don't really have many games on the books. You keep hearing like, oh, the Switch 2, maybe it'll be coming out next year. Like, how do you see the next year playing out for them?
I'm very excited for it because I like a Nintendo that's experiencing adversity, and it's hard for them to experience adversity when the Switch is doing so well. But maybe having a longer transition to another system than they wanted is a version of adversity. You can't exactly just pull a game off a shelf randomly and say we have it, although rumors are that Nintendo may have some Switch games ready to go. There's the eternal speculation of ports of things like Wind Waker. I know nothing about this, so just sort of floating that as an example of the kind of thing you can imagine. But I do know, we've seen in the past when things are light, Nintendo finds ways to reintroduce or repackage something. So you had the 3D Mario collection a few years ago. There was some Famicom detective games that got repackaged into a Switch release several years ago as well. So part of what I've begun thinking about is if over at NCL, they did recently have to delay the launch of the Switch 2, which is what the reporting from Bloomberg and VGC and others have indicated, what pivots are they making? One thing Nintendo likes to do, as you both know, is sell plastic. So the answer may just be we're going to make more amiibos and we're going to sell more plastic accoutrements for the things we have. We might do more merchandising. Who knows? Release a director's cut of the Mario movie. I don't know. So I'm just guessing and riffing. But I am very interested in seeing what other options the company might explore. So, for example, people were disappointed that Mother 3 wasn't localized or released even in Japanese form for the Nintendo Switch Online update that happened a couple of weeks ago. It was only offered in Japan and not in the States. Probably not coming here, but you would think that maybe there's a chance that if things are fallow for the fall and Nintendo's looking for a marketing beat and it's seen as a low lift, they take a game like that or other games that were only put out in Japan and bring them out in the US. Companies who are either in third place in the console race, that's not Nintendo, obviously, or who are experiencing otherwise experiencing adversity, often in those moments is when they become the most creative and innovative in what they're doing. And so I look at potential relative hardship that Nintendo might be facing for the back half of the year if they do have a lighter slate, as is speculated. And I think that could lead to something surprising and good. Of course, if you know the true history of Nintendo platforms and transitions, what it will lead to is just an extensive and awkward drought of software before the system is ready, which is anybody who was a long-suffering Nintendo 64 owner was familiar with, or a GameCube owner is familiar with, or a Nintendo Wii owner was familiar with, or a Wii U owner. So the pattern might continue. But, there's so many
You're right,
amazing...
though. It's when they're on top, when Nintendo's on top, like within the Switch generation, they typically do less and we saw that while we were working inside Nintendo, is that they had less of an appetite to do a lot of stuff because it was sort of selling itself. It was, you didn't really need to be creative or do that much. But when they are in sort of a challenging spot, this is when they kind of bloom into that like creative, weird Nintendo that I think a lot of people miss and a lot of people love. So
yeah, you can look at you can look at like what Nintendo is motivated to do, and a lot of their creativity obviously has to be channeled into launching the next system in a strong spot. But if they feel like the pressure to keep Nintendo Switch Online subscriptions high and vital when they don't have a lot of games with DLC plans ahead of them, then I look to like, oh, well, what can they do to keep NSO, people subscribing to it or something like that. So we just had Splatoon just had its DLC. I don't think we have a first party Nintendo game with an announced like schedule of continued support, right? I think like Mario Kart's done, Smash has been done for a long time, Splatoon is done. I may not be thinking of something obvious, but generally, like, so what are they going to do to prop up NSO for the year? And so does that mean GameCube games or something like that? Like that would be cool. I don't know. Maybe they sued Yuzu because they're about to do some amazing stuff with emulation.
That's the next console. That's it. We figured it out.
By the way, my kids, I play Another Code Recollection with them. And you know how the girl in there in the new version has like a Switch-like device called the DAS? My daughter's like, she's convinced that's what the new Switch is going to be. And they've announced it by putting it in Another Code Recollection. She's 7, so she's just, it's cute.
I like it. I like that theory a lot, actually.
So maybe they're doing
it's going to be called a Sheikah Slate.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that would be super cool. But yes, this was I managed to get all my most embarrassing stories of interviewing Nintendo people out.
That's what it's all about.
I feel like I accomplished that. I showed you my touching as good cardboard box. I think I've accomplished a lot in this conversation with you guys. It was I got this. I feel unburdened of
it's like the confessional booth.
Yes, stories. Well, for people who want to track you down online, where can they find you?
You can find me at gamefile.news if you want to read my work. I'm also on Threads and Twitter X at Stephen Totilo. So you can find me there. I'm always happy to get feedback, suggestions of stories to look into, and happy to answer questions about stories I've done in the past that might intrigue you. Certainly have appreciated the conversation and the questions and conversation with both of you today. And just, wish you guys both the best in everything that you're doing, because I think Kit and Krysta is great as a show. I'm so glad you guys are continuing what you've done, and that Nintendo wasn't the end of that. It's really cool to see you guys continue, and inspiring for somebody like me also trying to make it as an independent.
Thank you. That's so nice to hear. And it was so nice to hang out and chat with you. And I'm sure we'll see you soon around all of the events happening. But yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we're back.
Oh, I was not ready at all. I was like scrolling around.
I've got to catch you unawares.
Every time.
What's going to happen?
Wow, what an interesting conversation with Steven. He's just been through so much.
He's seen a lot.
He's seen a lot. He's done a lot. He's like that thing like Forrest Gump where he's like been there for things.
Right.
But yes, it's great to catch up with him. I'm so happy that we get to do these kinds of cool things with all of these journalists that we used to work with in a different capacity at Nintendo. Now we can have a different kind of relationship with them, and that's been really fun and interesting for us.
I'm so interested in this point of all this old material that some people may have.
Yeah.
And in the case of Steven, it's like, that sounds like a lot of legwork to go back through everything, especially if it's on these like old tapes.
Cassette tapes and everything.
Like, do you still have something to play this? Or
totally.
Like, what is it? But like, I do wonder if there can be this second wind from that era of people who were smart and saved that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what other little nuggets can be unearthed from that? Because, like, depending on the outlet you're working for, like, you may only need, like, the top line stuff. And if you actually go through it all, there could be some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and, especially with Nintendo these days, access to the development team and to people like Mr. Miyamoto and the president, of Nintendo and things like that is very limited.
Yeah.
Like they're not interested in doing a lot of press anymore. So the stuff that you have from when you did have access is more valuable than ever.
Totally.
Just to hear that kind of one-to-one conversation. So yeah, I'm curious. There's people like, not as cool as Steven, but there's people like Steven out there that probably have similar amounts of unearthed interviews and stories to share. So I wonder what else is out there for sure.
Let's move on to talk about some of the games we are playing, which, believe it or not, is more than Final Fantasy.
Although we are still deeply ingrained.
We're gonna do that last, and I'm gonna tell you now. You need to be careful about what you say about this game,
I know.
Because we're getting into the spoiler zone.
Yeah, this is why this is a spoiler cast game.
We have a whole spoiler cast coming at the end of the month.
Yeah, so we won't.
But we'll still touch on this.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we start with this Princess Peach Showtime demo?
Yeah, we actually have a video of us playing through the entire demo.
Yes, if you'd like to see that, that's up on our YouTube channel. But I want to talk about it a little bit more. So this game's still, it's like 10-ish
a week or
days,
so,
week and a half away.
Mm-hmm.
And for so long, people wondering, like, okay, this game looks kind of interesting, but I don't really know if I have a feel for how it plays. And then, lo and behold, we get this demo, which gave us, I think, an okay sense of how it played. But I wouldn't say this is like one of those slam dunk demos where I was like, yes, I'm in on this now.
Yeah, in terms of did the demo convince me that this game is a day one must buy? I do not think the demo did that. It did give us some more information about like what type of game this is, because it was kind of hard to tell from the trailers. Mm-hmm. Like you saw all the different transformations. They looked really cool. They were all very, there was a huge variety of them. But in terms of like, what does the gameplay feel like? What is the gameplay loop? How deep is each of the transformations? We did not have a good sense of that. I don't think anyone really did. The demo gave us a little taste of that, but still kind of left a bit of that as a question mark. Obviously, the demo is not very long. It's about 30 minutes. They showed 2 transformations, and it looked like as we were kind of going through, it's like, this is the first level of that transformation. So there's probably more for each transformation that you're going into.
Right.
So that's the part that I'm interested in, because on the surface, the demo that we, the 2 sort of early levels of each transformation that we played were pretty basic. It was fun, but it was pretty like, it wasn't like anything to write home about.
You did still die on the sword fighter.
I did still die on the sword fighter. I was like confused by this.
Confused by button mashing?
I don't know. What? It was weird. I was like, what am I supposed to do here? So there was probably more to each of these transformations and more gameplay mechanics that you get to experience as you get deeper into them. But those first 2 levels were like pretty, I would say, just like basic, right?
Yeah,
it was
definitely
pretty,
Right.
Nothing astounding happened. We're all like, wow, what a cool way to do this transformation. It was just like, the sword fighter, I'm baking a cake, like whatever.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I was super wowed by the demo, but I just still think I will get this game, and maybe that's a function of, just the games I've been playing lately. I think I would like something that's a little breezy and easy, because we've been playing Like a Dragon, Final Fantasy, and then Dragon's Dogma back to back to back. It's like,
it's a good dabble game.
Yeah, this is a nice little thing to have on the side and to relax a little bit more with than some of those other games.
Right.
There's also this discussion now of Nintendo's reluctance to say who the developer is, which it's a little weird.
Strange. Why would they not say it? I don't get it.
It's kind of like what they were doing with Mario Wonder on like The Voice of like, you'll find out when it comes out.
I think they're really in that mindset again where they think everything is a distraction to the gameplay. They do this sometimes, and they've been digging into this more and more, where like they don't want, like in Mario Wonder, for example, obviously that was very dramatic with Charles not being the voice of Mario anymore and somebody new coming on to do it. But it's like they don't want things like that to distract from people concentrating on playing the game and just like playing the game for what the game is. And I think for this one, they must have felt, and I don't know why, because it's a weird thing to feel, like Goodfeel, the rumored developer of this game, might have had maybe has some sort of connotation that they don't want to associate with this game. I don't know what that connotation would be. I don't know what that would be. Exactly. That's why it's strange to me.
Yeah, I don't get it. I think it's them being a little strange.
Yeah.
And it sounds like maybe, something, some decree that somebody from up on high.
I think so.
And it's like, oh, we dare not question this, even if it's a little bit weird.
Right.
Like that, we've seen that happen before.
We've seen that happen before.
And you try and push back against it, and you just can't. And ultimately, it's not worth your time. It's like,
whatever.
Fine, whatever.
The caginess of it makes it even more of like a thing that sticks out, though. So if they're trying to not draw attention to it, they've just drawn more attention to it, which is silly.
But it's not like Good Feel is a bad developer or anything.
That's what I'm saying.
They're a very good developer.
They're a great developer. They have developed games like this in the past. So I don't get it, but whatever. But you can kind of see the Good Feel stamp in the game already.
Right.
So.
There's also been a good amount of discussion now. People played it around like, well, who is the audience for this game? And are people, there's certain feelings that people might be having, like, should they maybe take that more into account of like, well, maybe this is not, a game that's made for me necessarily.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, clearly after playing the demo for sure, like it's a game that is aimed for maybe a different kind of audience. They're definitely maybe aiming for like a younger audience or someone that's new to video games. I mean, it doesn't matter. I think anyone can play any game at any level. Like you don't need to be like no one's going to be like, "Oh, you played this easy game, that makes you less of a gamer." Like who cares? It doesn't matter. That's
a fact. I hate to inform you. that's a proven fact, okay?
Okay, I see. Well, I don't believe in that fact.
Yeah.
But there's like certain like perception for people when it comes to like the type of game that you play, and if that makes you less hardcore or legit. I don't know. It just feels like this shouldn't be a thing, but it is. I think it's up to you to decide if this game is for you. That's what it is. Like if you feel like you want to play a game like this, even though you don't, typically play games like this, I think it's fine,
I think maybe some of it is, Nintendo's had this track record of making games that do appeal to a broad range of people and have something that are interesting gameplay-wise to a broad range. I think it's maybe a little too early to say that this doesn't necessarily have that because it seems like we played like the most basic parts of the game, so there could be more later on. But it is interesting, the little glimpse that we got of it so far.
Yeah.
You've been playing some other stuff.
I have.
This first game, how do you say it?
I think it's pronounced Balatro.
Balatro?
But I could be wrong.
Okay.
Can someone correct me if I'm wrong? But,
this is a game that I've been seeing a lot of people talking about. Maybe not on the same level as like a Pal World or a Helldivers, but like kind of one of those like stealth hits of the year so far, of which we have had a couple. What is this game? I'm not entirely clear.
It's a very interesting concept. It's like a roguelike card game. So it has some concepts around poker.
Okay.
Like some of the it's not poker, but there's some basic things like around creating like poker hands. So there's like full house, straights, 3 of a kind, 2 of a kind, pairs, whatever, that are in the game. That's how you advance the game. But other than that, there's really no other not a lot of other similarities to poker. But the game basically is you are trying to play these poker hands and you're trying to get as far as you can. And every single round, the amount of money you have to earn to like pass is like higher and higher. And it ratchets up pretty fast. So like you go from like 600 to like 12,000 pretty quickly. So it's really hard for you to like do it. And at the end of each round, you do get these different cards, and they're like joker cards that add different kinds of multipliers or different kinds of, elements or status effects within the round to help you get to those really high scores.
I see.
So it could be like, if you play straights this round, if all your hands are straights, you get a times like 50 multiplier. So like you're incentivized to like build straights into your hands. So it's really fun. It's very addictive. And because it's like roguelike, so you just keep like saying to yourself, okay, one more round. Can I get it to one more round?
Yeah.
And then when you lose, you're like, let me try again. There's a lot of like different cards that you can collect in the game as well, and there's some other elements where they add even more sort of cards to augment your gameplay. But it's really fun. I've been playing it like every day for a couple minutes, or like for like 15, 30 minutes or so. And yeah, I really like it.
How much poker would you say you need to really know or have down to get the most? So it sounds like you just need to know the different hands, mostly?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And they tell you really, you can pull up the different hands like pretty easily. Okay. And once you when you select the card, they tell you right on the screen, like you have 3 of a kind. You have
that's good.
A full house. Yeah. You have a straight. Okay. And what the multipliers are going to look like. It's very satisfying when you get all the multipliers too. It's like you start with like your base score and they add on like all the multipliers and then you can get to like 6-10 times your score, and it feels really cool. Yeah. I've seen some people that have gotten to like ridiculous like rounds. I think my best so far was like maybe like 20 hands. Oh. But I don't know. I feel like people are. I've not beaten it. I think there is a way you can beat it, but I don't know what that's like. Yeah. But yeah, there's some people that have shared screenshots where it's like, oh, I've gotten to like, like this ridiculous number. So I've not done that yet. Okay. Yeah.
I saw there was some hubbub about this game getting pulled in certain markets and on certain platforms because of like a misunderstanding about gambling of like is there gambling in this? So you're earning money. Yeah. But are you I mean obviously there's no real money involved. Yeah. Exactly. It sounds like one of those weird ESRB
I think it was a
misunderstandings.
Because there is poker elements in the game. Obviously in poker you can gamble with poker, so I can see how that could be something. You are earning money and you're using that money to buy different cards at the end of each round, but it's not real money. Yeah. I don't know. It was like delisted from Switch and then it got relisted. I bought it on Switch, so it's back on Switch in the eShop. Seemed like there was some weirdness there.
I think there was another game last year where this happened to it. It seems to be a common thing that happens. We've talked to some other developers who were like, yeah, we're thinking of putting this kind of like in-game casino thing in, but we don't want that to hurt our ratings, so should we maybe not do that?
It's so weird. Yeah. It's not real.
I don't know. I don't get it.
It's not real.
Whatever. Yeah. That's cool. And then you've been playing this other one called
Mediterrenea Inferno, I believe.
Wow. What's this?
So this is another game that I kind of had my eye on, and it's out now, and I got a code for it. Thank you so much. And this is one of those like sort of narrative-driven games, and it's done in a way that you and I both kind of like this, where it's done through like conversations with people. It's done through like text messages or just sort of the way that we communicate now is reflected very real in the game. I will say this game is pretty mature, and they give you a pretty big warning at the very beginning. That's like, if you are sensitive to these kinds of topics, just be aware. And it's very clear that the developer is reflecting on some serious and heavy things. So far, it's been really interesting. It's very artistic. It's really beautiful. The music is really good. It just has this sort of like, almost like a film noir quality to it. Like it just feels like artsy and interesting and cool and fun. And it takes place in Italy. So you feel like there's like a lot, kind of like this, like, I don't know, like it feels like fashionable. And I like it. It's like the cool kids that I'm not a part of, but I get to peep into their lives a little bit. And it follows like a group of friends and sort of their relationships. And there's a lot of like tea spilling and gossiping and stuff like that I think will eventually lead to some not so pleasant things. But I'm kind of curious to see how it all unfolds. But it's kind of like watching like Gossip Girl or something like that, where you're just like looking into this other world that you might not have access to.
Oh, so that's cool.
I like
nice.
it.
And you're playing this on the Switch?
Yes, I'm playing on Switch.
But it seems like this and Balatro on all sorts of
every platform pretty much,
Okay, nice. Well, let's get into old Final Fantasy VII here. Again, I'm warning you. don't do it.
You're silencing me.
Let's see. So how many hours are we into this now? I think I'm maybe 23, 4 or so.
Yeah.
I think we're very close to each other.
We're very close.
We might be at literally the same place, actually.
I think so, too.
Yeah. You said you fell asleep playing yesterday. How did that happen?
I was tired from this daylight savings.
Come on!
And
it's 1 hour.
I played like this one part, and then the game switched to a cutscene.
Yeah.
And I was playing like remote play, so I was like laying down, and I was like watching the cutscene, and I definitely fell asleep. And then I woke up like briefly, and I was like, "Oh man!" Like the cutscene had all happened, and my characters were just like standing, like ready to go on to the next thing, and I was like, "Wait, what happened?"
Uh-oh.
So I put my stuff away and went back to sleep, and I was like, maybe watch a YouTube video of what happened during that part, because I was actually really interested in this part. And I was bummed that I like totally fell asleep and missed part of it.
Yeah.
But yes, we are very close to each other. The story has definitely progressed a fair amount.
It's been quite story heavy, actually.
It's been quite story
heavy. The
heavy.
last 5 to 6 hours.
Yeah, we were both saying like it feels a little bit, and it's not like terrible, because Final Fantasy VII is a narrative-driven game, and you're playing largely for the story. I think the exploration was just such a breath of like fresh air for us when we started the game. We were like, oh my gosh, it's so cool that we get to do this too. But then we got locked into like many hours of story stuff, and we haven't really gotten to explore a lot for like the last 6 hours, I would say, right?
Yeah, I think that, I continue to feel like the pacing of this game is a little off, because you will have those open world chunks where you can do whatever you want, and then you get locked into story sequences, and you kind of can't leave those.
Right.
And especially this part we've been doing now, it's felt like 3 or 4 of those back to back. So you do kind of reach a point where it's like, I'd like to do some of that. Like, I'm ready to go back and do that.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's something that you wanted to get from those that you don't have yet.
Yeah.
And it's like, I actually can't do that. So it's like the moment you start to get into those, the game kind of takes it away from you, which doesn't feel super great.
I actually even tried, like after I did a big story section, I realized I can leave the city that I was in.
Yeah.
And go into more of like just the region.
Uh-huh.
And I tried
It was blocked off.
Yes.
It wouldn't let you. Yeah.
I tried to leave. I was like, oh, good. I can leave and do something else for a little bit.
Right.
And I was like swimming away. I was trying to swim. And then the game blocks you off and it says, you cannot go further.
Right. Because there was a story thing you needed to do. I think that area is going to open up next for us.
I'm excited to explore it. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's been a lot of that back to back.
Yes. But I got the same feeling where I'm like, let me leave. I want to do something else.
So what are some non-spoilery things we can say we've done? We did the big swimsuit area. Wowzers. Wow. Wowie. That's my reaction to that.
Yeah. You know what I've been really liking? This is also not a spoiler. After this
about swimsuits?
I mean, I like the swimsuits like anybody else. Give me all the swimsuits. Great. But this game does have like, it still has retained the 90s cheese.
Oh yeah.
And I'm glad that they didn't like try to modernize these characters, because they're ridiculous. Like, some of the characters you meet are just absolute like
they're caricatures.
They're caricatures, but they feel very like sitcom-y and 90s and sort of that like kind of campy quality of being like very over exaggerated and sort of And I'm very glad they kept that in. I feel like we were really treated to a lot of those characters within the last couple of hours and the sections that we were in. The other thing that I think you and I were kind of having like a differing opinion on was, because we were locked into these like pretty big story sections. The story sections really require you to do kind of like mini games almost to advance the story. You quite liked most of the mini games. I got a little tired of the mini games, I gotta say.
Well, so I don't think it's a spoiler. One of the areas that we were just in was what's it called, the Golden Saucer?
Yes.
Which is this
like
sort of theme park.
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere that I don't know why it's there, but you visit it for story reasons. And it has a story reason for you to be there, but they do kind of cut you loose and they want you to go explore all these different areas. I like this area a whole lot. Like visually, it is amazing how much detail they've put into creating a theme park. And there's maybe, like, I'd say more than like a half dozen attractions that you can go to. And again, the game wants you to do it before you can progress. And I had a pretty good time doing those. They're all really fast.
Yeah.
Like, none of them are too complex. Like, you can get some stuff for doing them. So, you didn't like those so much?
No, I'm fine with it. I really like that area a lot as well. Like you said, it just has such, they captured the sort of the vibe of a theme park so perfectly. You know, it just felt like I was at Disneyland.
Right.
They even have like a haunted mansion kind of thing.
Yeah,
that was amazing. But I feel like the game does this to you a lot, where you're like in the story, but the way that they progress the story is for you to do these little mini games.
Right.
And it almost feels like, this is a weird example, but it's like, instead of eating like lunch, I just ate like a bunch of the little snacks.
Well, snacks, yeah.
And I feel like I'm satiated every time I eat a snack, but like 5 minutes later, I'm really hungry.
Right. So this is the girl dinner of video games, is what you're saying. And some crackers and some cheese cubes.
I had a little cheese cube.
And,
I had a little
go.
salami, a little handful of almonds. But I'm like ready for dinner. Like, give me my dinner.
Well, again, I think that plays into like the point about the pacing of, sometimes it does feel like a lot of these stacked up, where it's like maybe if you spread these out, I wouldn't have that fatigue of like, gosh, I just did a couple of these.
Because after that part, you do even more mini games to do the next part.
You mean after you leave the saucer?
Right.
So we both finished that, or I think you're about to finish that part. I think this is going to end up being the worst part of the game, that little chunk that you do after the saucer.
Oh, really? You didn't like that?
I strongly dislike that, but I have a reason.
Because you don't like Queen's Blood.
Well, no. It's not that I don't like it. So Queen's Blood is this very in-depth card game that they have in Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
And up to this point, it has been optional. So, like, all the shops sell Queen's Blood cards. Like, you can have a crazy collection.
Yeah.
And just all over in the environment, there's people that you can battle against.
Yeah.
I've chosen to not. I'm not going to do this. Like, I'm here for the story, for the main action of the game. This is the same thing we talked about in Like a Dragon.
Yeah, where they wanted you to be a Sugimo master and you didn't want to.
I was like, good for you. You've put this really well-made mini game into this game, but I'm just not here for this. Again, maybe when I'm finished the game, I'll go back to that and do that, but I'm good. And even up to this point, there have been a few things that have seemed to be story critical, where they ask you to play this game, but you have been able to bypass it.
Correct.
Like
cruise ship.
On the cruise ship, like there's some big Queen's Blood tournament, and you can go in and basically just say, I withdraw, and the story will continue. So I was like, okay, so I don't really need to worry about this. But in this chunk that we just did, you have to do it.
You don't.
I think you do.
There are other ways to get the items you need, but that was one of the easier.
Well, that's another shortcoming of that area, is like there's a couple things they want you to do, but it's all very vague. Of like,
you have to talk to that Esther person.
You have to talk to the lady, and she basically tells you what to do next, right?
But every time you talk to her, she tells you something different.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
So you can basically pick and choose. It is a little confusing.
I don't know. This part of the game is not very good, I have to say. And so she's like, you got to go play these Queen's Blood people. They're hustling people in the casino. You got to go beat them. And there's 3 of them. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to play this game. Like, I didn't watch the tutorial because I'm like, I'm not going to be doing this. So I don't need to know this. So I had to learn from scratch on these like non-beginner like battles, like how to play this mini game. Which and it's like, I haven't been buying these cards. I have the beginner starter deck. So I eventually like brute forced my way through it, and I found the tutorial on YouTube that they don't even have it in the little in-game manual.
True.
They don't have that tutorial in there. That sucks.
Okay.
I'm sure there's got to be people like me who are just like, oh, whatever, Queen's Blood.
Yeah.
And then you just hit this wall of like, no, you need to learn this.
Well,
now.
you didn't have to, is the thing.
I did.
You could have picked another thing.
The game could have more clearly told me that I had options.
I told you.
After I had done it.
Oh, that's too bad. I'm very good at Queen's Blood.
Well, good for you.
But I can see how that is. That part also frustrated me because I just didn't know what to do next.
Right.
And I just kept talking to her, and I realized, oh, she's telling me where to go next. And every time I talk to her, she's giving me a different piece of advice.
Right.
To find what I needed.
Right.
And so I was okay. And I chose to play Queen's Blood because I knew how to play.
Right.
But I can see that being, if you had not been following along at all, like that could be really hard. And I have been collecting cards, so I was good. But like that would be hard if you didn't do any of that stuff beforehand. But yeah, I'm glad you got past it.
I hope I don't have to do it again,
That's like Queensblood
but I don't
in
know.
real life.
Well, I do think, I mean...
Shouldn't they make a
it seems like...
standalone game?
Yes, that is the solution to them railroading, to them like road-blocking you in this game. It's like, just put this somewhere else and let people play it there.
They should do Queensblood.
We get it. You went to the effort to make this. You want people to play it. Put it on a phone.
I would love to
put it on a phone.
Like a mobile game that's Queensblood that you can play with other people.
Great. I saw that the dev team 3D printed a Queensblood board that's got the castle and everything on it. Looked very cool.
So cool.
Don't make me do it in the game if I don't want to. I did not buy Queensblood. I bought Final Fantasy VII. Jeez.
QB, as the experts call it.
Oh yeah, I saw them. I was like, what is that? Oh, Queensblood. The quarterback, huh?
Yeah. Queensblood's a good game, though.
Other thoughts on Final Fantasy VII that are not spoiler related?
No.
It may be best to just
there's some big spoiler things story things that happen in this area that I really want to talk to you about because you have not played the original game and I'm really curious about
that relate back to the original game.
Yeah. I really want
interesting.
So after this we can talk about it because I was like, I wonder how you feel because when I saw the things that transpired in this area I was like, oh, what does this mean?
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure I probably didn't recognize the...
Yeah, there's a very significant thing that happens in this area that I was very curious about, if they stuck to the original or not.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah. I was like, what is this going to be?
Let's quickly move on before you have a little slip here. And on to the news. So Mario Day was Sunday. Like we said, we have a whole video going through in great detail over everything there, but let's just quickly recap what we got. So there was about a 3-minute video with Mr. Miyamoto, looking cute as can be.
Oh my gosh, so cute.
And they revealed the sequel to the Mario movie. It's going to be out April 3rd, 2026. I like how they can be so specific with a date.
I know.
2 years out.
They might pick another date.
I mean, they did end up delaying the last one.
Delay it a little bit, yeah.
Right. And Chris Meledandri was there, so it's the same team from Illumination who was working on this.
Great.
The one little bit of information we got was they said they will be focused on broadening Mario's world, which you can interpret any number of ways. And that was kind of the first 2.5 minutes of this 3-minute video. So then it cut straight to boom, boom.
Launch dates.
Launch dates for Paper Mario 1000 Year Door, May 23rd. Right within your birthday.
Birthday month.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Nintendo.
And then Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, June 27th. Mm-hmm. And after that, for Nintendo Switch, I don't know. Endless Ocean? I don't...
Oh, Endless Ocean.
Did we ever find out if Endless Ocean, who is publishing?
No.
Did they ever find out?
No. This is another one. The developer is also very we don't know who this is and who's publishing.
But is it a Nintendo game? Is Nintendo publishing it?
Third-party showcase.
That's got to be somewhere. We just don't know. Then we got this little mention of Dr. Mario, Mario Golf, and Mario Tennis. Those are out now on Game Boy NSO. And then the day prior, on Saturday, LEGO had this tease of the LEGO Mario Kart project they're doing for 2025. Looks very cool. I'm sure that'll be a big hit. This Mario Lego stuff seems to be really popular.
Very popular. I mean, whenever I go anywhere to look at Legos, it's like front.
Lego has every license under the sun. I can't. When I look at this, I'm like,
Star
what?
Wars,
I saw they have
Disney,
they have
BTS.
BTS. Wow, you really do have everything.
Remain relevant through.
Yeah. And then everything but Pokemon. They're on the little fake knockoff Lego.
That's right.
The Mega Blocks or the whatever it is. I'm like, man, you got Lego. Got to make the jump.
Yeah. Good for them though.
So, yeah, you mentioned at the top, this, in addition to the news, this was the big surprise for us, was that they made such a big deal out of Mario Day and actually had substantial news, which was such a change from the years that we were there, where it was very, fan-focused. And, we spent a lot of time talking about how Nintendo is a company that moves slowly, so, a lot of the things that we experienced and noted when we were there kind of still carry on to this day, but this is a big change of, wow, things are different from when we were there. The perception and the implementation of Mario Day inside Nintendo has really changed.
Yeah. It when we were there, it was very much something that was talked about extensively, but ultimately it was always a fan-driven moment. And Nintendo had always been very reluctant to sort of officially acknowledge Mario Day. And by officially acknowledging it, I think it's to release news, which is obviously different now. But, we talked about this in the Mario Day video that we put out already. But it's like they definitely are in a position where they're feeling a bit of pressure on remaining relevant, especially if there's this rumored delay for Switch 2. What are they going to do to keep people thinking about Nintendo, talking about Nintendo, making things that they're talking about a moment? Putting it around a Mario Day wrapper is a way to do that. So yeah. I think they made the right decision this year because they needed that kind of news beat in this moment.
Right. Mario movie out before or after the Zelda movie?
Before.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well before.
Yeah,
they've made one of those before. They've got all the designs figured out. They've already know kind of how to work together and get that done. Mm-hmm. And in some sense, I'm surprised they waited this long to announce it. It's like almost a year later when I think they probably knew like day one, like, oh yeah, we're making more of these.
$1 billion
like the
later?
Money's pouring in. Yeah. So the other little interesting thing here is those launch dates were teased by Puro, the leaker, previously, and once again,
he was right.
Absolutely right. So Puro continues to have this really strong track record of sharing accurate information. So, I'm sure the hunt was already on. The hunt intensifies, and the clock is ticking.
Oh, the clock is ticking.
Because one day you'll have bigger news than the Luigi's Mansion 2 release date that you don't want to get out there.
Yeah, I wonder what Nintendo is doing to intensify that search, but I can only imagine that Puro's days are numbered.
Oh, they're looking. It doesn't mean they can necessarily find Puro.
They're pretty good, though. So
they will. I think they will eventually.
I think they're going to
get to Puro, but when? But when? When is the question?
It could be too late. It could be after a significant thing, like Switch 2 gets spoiled. Or gets leaked by Puro, and that would be a big deal.
That would be quite the happening if Puro spoiled that.
Yeah. We don't know, and we don't know what the status is, but we definitely we're watching carefully because Puro might disappear at any moment.
But then next week is GDC, and you might just hear about it in the W Hotel bar anyway. So I don't know.
Get a couple of drinkies into those devs, and their lips get loose. Right, oh my goodness.
We asked our Patreon community what one addition they would like to make to the Mario movie sequel to make it just a little bit better. I think there was some very constructive criticism about the first Mario movie and how they could improve in the future. And got some interesting responses. 62% of people, overwhelming majority, said, give the movie more of a story. 29% said, introduce more classic Mario characters. 5% said more hidden details and references. 3%, I threw this in here just for funsies, make it a musical.
Oh.
And a mere 1% said new celebrity voices.
Oh, okay. No one
what if the celebrity voice was Charles Martinet, though?
Oh.
I'm just throwing that out there.
Interested now,
maybe more than 1% would go for that then.
Maybe.
I'm just saying. I don't know.
Well, if Mario's dad comes back, that is Charles Martinet. So.
Well, now what if we're in the Mario multiverse and it's Charles Martinet's Mario versus Chris Pratt's Mario?
We don't want that. That seems very confusing.
For the record, please don't do that. I'm so over.
No multiverse.
No more multiverses.
Yeah, no, that's confusing.
For the love of no.
Yeah, we can't do that again.
I can't believe I even said that.
You're putting it out there now. Now it'll be your fault if it ever happens.
Tuscube said the universe. They already teased Yoshi, but I'd still really love for them to adapt the tale of Mario versus Wario. An exploration of their childhood growing up together. Wario, who wants all the attention and glory. Mario, the one who has it, but is too good-natured to care. Would be pretty interesting. Also, Wario automatically makes everything he is in better.
Oh, I love a Wario.
I actually don't think this is that far-fetched because I think we all like the idea of a villain switcheroo.
Yes.
Where Bowser was the bad guy, now he's kind of the good guy, and they're fighting together to oust the new bad guy.
Yeah. So the plot of Mario RPG, basically. is what we want.
Something like that sounds great. Because, I mean, you can't just have the same villain again and again and again.
Right,
you need some variety.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think that's that outlandish. Waluigi, I draw the line there. We don't need that.
We don't need that.
No.
We already saw there's like a lot of different kind of facets to Bowser's personality and character as well. So there's such a good opportunity to make him like a reluctant part of the team. And I think that would be like very comedic as well.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Brad SF56 says, I loved the film and it felt like an appropriately bombastic celebration of all things Mario, but some of my favorite moments were those more small, subtle hints at something deeper in the characters, like Peach talking about her past or Mario's relationship with his father. Going forward, I'd like to see more of this.
Yes. Yeah. I would love to see more of that. I love that little tease where she was like, I was just here. Like, I don't know how I got here, but then I just, wandered into the Mushroom Kingdom, and now I'm their queen.
Exactly.
It's like, well, how did this happen? You know? Right. That was such an interesting part of the movie.
And then Topher Schmofer said, I love the movie a lot, and I thought they nailed the vibes and fun of the Mushroom Kingdom. The movie just felt too fast to me. They wanted to do too much in such a short time frame that there wasn't much time to get to know the characters or introduce any kind of world building. Hopefully they'll have a chance to dabble in more of that next time. Yes. When people say more story, like that's more what I think of. Like, again, like I don't think a Mario movie needs the most complex plot, but it is true that movie moved very fast. The pacing was extremely fast, which on one hand I like, but on the other hand it's like, yeah, that'd be nice to get a little bit more here and there.
Yeah, I think they have now set a really good foundation for the universe, and now they can just build on it. So now they don't need to do a lot of work like establishing characters, establishing, different locations. They've done that already, so they can maybe take a little bit more time to like go deeper in on some of those. Yeah. So this was like very much an intro, and now they have, this opportunity to like go into details, which I love.
Yeah. Next story is a very sad one. Legendary artist Akira Toriyama has passed away at the age of 68.
So sad.
And this was really one of those just groundbreaking things that happened last week with just an almost unprecedented outpouring of love for him and his work. And a lot of people really pointing out all of the influences that he had on games. Obviously, there were a lot of games that he was directly involved in.
Right.
Like Dragon Quest comes to mind, Chrono Trigger, Blue Dragon, the Xbox game, and obviously there's dozens and dozens of Dragon Ball games.
Yes.
But there were other like more subtle things of like, well, this thing, maybe had an influence on this, which led to this. It's like, wow, that like really did have this very pervasive role in shaping like what games have become.
Yeah, and also like the most iconic video game characters were inspired by his work. And it's just amazing to see like people's outpouring of like memories about how they really changed, their childhood was really affected by Toriyama-san, and it's just like, it's so sad. He was very young, He was
only 68.
Very sudden as well. So it's a huge loss.
Right, and we have this message from Dragon Quest creator Yuji Horii, which he shared, which I'll just quickly read here, since it sums up well a lot of the thoughts. And obviously these two have been collaborating for decades. I'm still in overwhelming disbelief at the news of Toriyama's sudden death. I have known Toriyama since I was a writer at Shonen Jump. When I started to work on Dragon Quest, I asked him to do artwork for the game at the recommendation of Shonen Jump publishing editor Kazuhiko Torishima. In the 37 years since, Toriyama has designed characters, monsters, and created countless more charming characters for Dragon Quest. The history of Dragon Quest goes hand in hand with Toriyama's character designs. Toriyama and the late Dragon Quest composer Koichi Sugiyama were companions who worked on Dragon Quest with me for a long time. To think that they would die. I don't know what more to say. This is truly, truly unfortunate. This is originally posted in Japanese, so this is, the translation might have some give or take, but what a crushing message from poor Yuji Horii.
Oh my gosh. This is like something that is scary to think about, that eventually will happen more, I guess. And it's like one of those things where like you just don't know what to do afterwards. You feel very lost, and you can just feel that in this message. And yeah, to have someone that you have worked with for so long who's just so significant kind of ripped away from you like that is, yeah, it's really tough to read. And I feel for Mr. Hori, who we've met and spent time with, and I can't imagine what he's going through.
Yeah, that was where my morbid brain went. Was, we kind of had this boom, this like pop culture boom in the 80s, and a lot of those people who created those things like became like very, well-known figures like Toriyama and others, and they're all starting to get up in years. So it's like, gosh, we really better like celebrate these people while they're still with us.
Yes, yeah. Exactly.
Back to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, we've started to get some sales updates on the game. As of now, Square Enix has not shared like a definitive global sales figure, which I think is telling because we now have updates from Japan and the UK, and it's surprisingly low. Shocking, perhaps shockingly, depending on your perspective. So let's start with Japan. So the first sales update we got was 263,000 copies sold, but compared to Final Fantasy VII Remake in 2020, it's down from over 700,000 units sold. Yeah. And it's even lower than the initial update for Final Fantasy XVI, which was at 336,000. So significantly down from the first remake and down even from 16, whereas I think, the reviews for Rebirth are substantially higher than 16. Obviously, there's that was a late PS4 game. The install base was much bigger, but I mean, it felt like there was a lot of hype for this game.
Yeah, it definitely. We were talking about this last week, where it's like, it kind of felt like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was the bigger game, even though Final Fantasy XVI is the newest entry, and there were times where we were questioning like the marketing for that because it seemed like they were almost cannibalizing Final Fantasy XVI in favor of Rebirth. Mm-hmm. But kind of seemed like none of that mattered if it can't even outsell Final Fantasy XVI, which I think Sony had said last year that was quite a disappointment, the sales to them. 16 sales.
I mean, Square Enix will claim that anything is a disappointment, so I don't know if that's necessarily the bar. So in the UK, and the UK is notoriously a PlayStation first market.
Yeah, that's true.
So their number was, it came in first place, but it was down 30% compared to Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Yeah.
Which again, just kind of a shocking decline. The Japan one, I think we've done podcasts about this before. Like, I think we can fairly say that, like, outside of Switch, like the traditional console market in Japan is kind of cooked, where the interest and the demand for, like, put it in your home, play it on a TV only kind of console games, like, it's just not there.
Yeah.
And the Switch is this outlier as a hybrid. People can take it with you, and mobile gaming is so much bigger. But it's just not...
Surprisingly UK, though.
Right, the UK one is surprising too, of 30% down, and we haven't heard anything about the US numbers yet, and it's still possible that the US is a strong market, and that maybe these other markets are holding back some sort of a bigger sales announcement by Square Enix, but just a little bit shocked at these first two updates that we've got so far.
Yeah, this is like one of their biggest games, if not the biggest game of the year for them. And all indicators from the amazing reviews and all the conversation and just the sort of the positive conversation around the game from literally everyone, and the game is fantastic, would indicate really strong sales, but that just doesn't seem to be the case, which is very surprising.
Yeah, I mean, we did maybe sense some concern from them with all of the, hey, you don't need to play the first one to jump into this. Like maybe they sensed a bit of a weakness with that.
Yeah.
Especially with this being such a different kind of game. We're going to be like, oh, I didn't play the first one. Like I really am not equipped to go. But again, it seems like there's a lot of people who played the first one who are just sitting this one out.
Yeah. You were close to sitting it out.
The ending of the first game really left me very confused. I have not had those sorts of concerns as I've played this game so far.
Right.
But I was just I was like, I don't know where this is going, and I don't know if I'm going to be into that.
Yeah, so maybe a lot of people are just like you.
I think
they weren't convinced.
I don't know. The other thing that I wonder about is, obviously Final Fantasy VII is like an iconic game, like just a game that constantly gets brought up when people talk about games and is a classic, but it is, 20-something years old, and if you're under 20-something years old, what does this game mean to you? Like, does the significance of remaking Final Fantasy VII, like, do you care? I mean, you probably saw like Sephiroth on GameFAQs character ranking brackets.
Maybe,
but it's going to mean something to them versus something to you who experienced that game and is a very kind of formative game for you.
Well, yeah, that is the sort of the built-in challenge or opportunity with a remake that's been of a game that's that old, right? Like the opportunity is that you can get a whole new audience to jump in because it feels like a fresh, brand new game to them, because it is.
Right.
The challenge is that if you don't, maybe if it's not appealing enough and you don't have the nostalgia for it, then you're going to skip. I would have thought that, and I think I believe this from playing both these games, that they have really done such a great job of making this feel like a brand new game, that someone that did not have the nostalgia for Final Fantasy VII would be very interested to play. So again, I'm just like kind of in shock of what is actually happening with the sales numbers, how it is just very, it feels such a departure from my perception of like where this game was going to be and how well it's going to do. Yeah, I'm just really surprised by it. So, do you think it's because of the install base? Is that really the issue here?
I don't have the difference in install base off the top of my head. I mean, it obviously plays some role. I think this whole exclusivity strategy, it's just not working, And I have to imagine that they got a fat check from Sony to even do this. So that, probably helps to offset some of that. But this is your main series. Like you gotta keep this vibrant. You gotta keep it out there. So containing it to this one platform, again, it's always just felt like a very dated approach.
Yeah.
Like it's not 15 years ago anymore. And the one it's like fine if you want it to be a console exclusive, fine. But the PC audience, to not engage the PC audience now, like that's the one that I think is killing them. And
Sony does put the games on PC, but just later.
I mean, they do it eventually.
Just do it eventually. Do it earlier than eventually.
Remake, eventually came out on PC as well. But like, why not just have that? Those two are launching day one, PC and PS5. I think it would be a very different story.
Yeah.
People who are overlooking the PC market these days are making a huge mistake, and maybe they've just backburnered that to get it done on PS5, or maybe that's part of their deal. I don't know. Maybe Sony told them, follow our approach, like this works. And maybe eventually they'll make that up, but like this hurts to see day one. Because it's like there's obviously there's not a quality issue with this game.
Not at all.
They've clearly broken out all the stops to market it. Like you see this game everywhere.
Yeah.
People are talking about this game nonstop. So it's a little bit of a baffling one. And I would be really frustrated if I was in Square Enix right now.
Me too. Yeah.
That's the news. Let's move on to questions from our Patreon community. And everything we do on this channel is made possible by our Patreon family. Check us out at patreon.com/KitandKrysta. We have exclusive content that you cannot get anywhere else.
Yes.
Get early access to this very podcast and much, much more. It's worth a look.
Yes, please check us out.
First question is from Ninja11. Hi, Kit and Krysta. I may be looking too deep into this, but on Twitter, Illumination reposted the Mario Day announcement trailer that Nintendo uploaded, except they cut out the Paper Mario and Luigi's Mansion release date announcements. Is that a double standard? They can advertise that they made the Mario movie to sell tickets on their other movies, but they can't advertise the upcoming remakes that were some of the source material for the Mario movie. I don't know, but it just seems unfair. Is this a Nintendo choice, an Illumination choice, or am I just looking too deep into it?
I think this is something that it is just a decision where they want to have Illumination focused on the movie. They don't want Illumination, they as a Nintendo, don't want Illumination really taking lead on any messaging around the games, because that's not what they do.
Especially if it's not Mario the movie, the game.
Right.
Which we're still waiting for.
Maybe might happen. But, they're really focused on keeping everything very contained. Like if you're just going to be partnering with somebody to make a movie, that is the thing that you're going to be talking about. Like in the instance of Lego, if you're partnering with them to make a Lego set, Lego's not going to be talking about, other Mario games. They're going to talk about Lego only. So they're just wanting to keep the message very pure. I think now that they do have a lot of different partners, that's something that is important for them to just make sure that everything is communicated in the right way.
Mm-hmm. Noah-san's next. What do you think of Nintendo releasing a Mario Through the Years video, but not mentioning Sunshine Galaxy or basically any games not currently available for purchase on Nintendo Switch? I feel they may have done it to avoid confusion on these games not being available for those who see them in the video and search them on the eShop. But if it's a history video, it does feel weird to exclude huge games in the series just because they aren't available now.
I don't think it's a history video. I think it's a video.
It says Mario Through the Years.
But yes, that is the title of the video, but the purpose of the video is to sell you things. So I don't think Nintendo is really interested in any sort of...
They're opening a museum. Maybe they should get interested.
Maybe they should, but these kinds of videos are only to do one thing, and the purpose of it is to sell you things. So
I do get it when you watch the video. It's not like they listed every Mario game except those. Like it is a very small number of games that they're touching, but they do have big available now on the in the eShop.
In the eShop,
right?
Yeah.
But this kind of cherry picking of history, it just does give me this lingering concern about the museum of what is your intention with this, and is it just going to be a sales pitch for the product du jour, or is it going to actually have some historical rigor to it, where you are, putting out the story as it was, whether it kind of serves you in the moment or not. And that museum's not open, so we don't know. But yeah, I did get kind of a weird feeling from this.
Oh yeah, for sure. But this is what they do. They're very focused on selling you the products that are available, and these kinds of videos that they make, all of these kinds of videos that they make is not for the purpose of some sort of education or some sort of historic preserving history or anything like that. It's just to sell you the stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Baby Chris has the next question. With the celebration of the Switch, where's the weirdest place you have played your Nintendo Switch at? For me, it was year one of the Switch, and being from Texas, there was a popular spot in Austin, Texas for barbecue, Franklin's Barbecue. The lines at the time could expand longer than 4 hours for a plate of barbecue at the time. I brought my Switch and played Puyo Puyo Tetris while waiting in the line outside. Is Franklin's the one that we went to?
Yes, we went to, and Salt Lick. We went to both.
We went to both?
Yes. We had the meat sweats because we ate barbecue every day, because it was awesome.
I remember Salt Lick because you had in the middle of nowhere. You had to drive for miles and miles and miles down the nutty brown highway to get there. Franklin's, for some reason, I have less.
It's in the city.
Of a memory of.
We stood in line.
But I'm sure it was extremely delicious.
Yes, it's very good.
Strangest place or most interesting place you have played Switch?
I took this thing with me everywhere. So I played it on all my travels. I was in the mountains of Thailand at this elephant reserve thing, and I was playing my Switch there. I feel like I've taken this thing with me all over the world at this point and played it everywhere.
Yeah.
It was great.
I don't have a very interesting response for myself, so I'm going to co-opt one of our friends' responses.
Kilimanjaro.
Our good friend Chad, who now works at Square Enix.
Yeah.
He worked with us at Nintendo.
That's pretty cool.
He went to Africa and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, which I believe is in or around Kenya.
Yes.
To the very top, the peak.
Yes.
And he played Switch there. And this was like within like a month or two of Switch coming out. So
Right.
it was like a whoa.
Wow. And he had a great
moment.
photo of
Yes.
him. It says like, I'm at the peak of
Exactly.
Kilimanjaro.
Right.
Here's a Switch.
That's the coolest one that I know of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like the, when we get an opportunity to play a game and also be in that kind of environment in real life. I remember you went to Japan, you played Okami.
Right.
And you were like looking out at
that
a
was
Zen
cool.
garden.
Yeah, that was cool.
Like that's one of the really cool parts of being able to take it with you is that you can be
Right.
in like kind of a similar environment in real life and be really feel like you're immersed in that environment as you're playing a game.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Bruce Dash is next. Hey, Kit and Krysta with the Princess Peach Showtime demo now out. It seems like reception towards the demo doesn't leave a good impression about the gameplay. I recall a similar thing happening with the Mario vs. Donkey Kong demo last month where the demo didn't offer enough. So playing only the first few levels of the beginning world where the game starts off relatively easy and the demo feeling quite short doesn't leave a good impression on the game's overall difficulty ramping up for the later worlds. Perhaps that demo could have had a hand-picked selection of levels not in sequential order in order to have players try out more of that game's later puzzle mechanics. Could releasing a demo before the release of a game backfire for Nintendo in cases like this where people reconsider their decision in purchasing the game versus the option of not releasing a demo at all? Does Nintendo keep track of data of how many users download a demo and how many go through with a purchase of the game after trying the demo?
The data part, 100% yes.
Yes, they can track all of that, and they do.
Yes. I don't think they've had a very good track record with demos lately, Nintendo. The Mario
these two for sure.
versus
Yeah.
Donkey Kong one was
I don't know what
Why? What was
it was
the
over
point of
before
that?
over before it
It
started.
was an 8-minute demo that left you with no good impression of that game and no sense of like the depth of the puzzle. They show you like a little sizzle reel trailer at the end, which is what they do with Princess Peach as well, but it does not give you a good sense of what this game, like how deep is this game?
The thing that is a little puzzling for me is, making a demo is actually a lot of work.
Yes.
And it's a lot of development resources. And I know when the years that we did not have E3, we heard some of the developers were breathing a sigh of relief of oh, thank goodness we don't have to make this E3 demo. We can actually focus on the game.
Right. So
for them to go to those efforts, but then release this kind of meh demo, it's like some wire got crossed along the way because this is not everything it could be. Compare it to a few weeks ago we talked about the Pepper Grinder demo, which immediately I was like, I get it. I get why this game is cool.
Yes.
I think I'm gonna get it. And it immediately sold you on the core conceit of the game.
Yeah.
These have not done that.
Right. The other thing that I think that does well in a demo form is when you have a really big RPG, Unicorn Overlord, for example, where you just want to kind of get started and get into the main gameplay mechanics, and you want all that data to transfer over.
Anytime you can transfer it over, that's a really nice.
That's a really nice thing, and they do that with triangle strategy, for example.
Most demos these days do have that to some degree, which I really like.
That's a really cool thing and then you feel like, okay, I feel like I'm already kind of invested in this big game, I've done the things, now I'm ready to jump into it. That's a good flow from demo to main game. These games though, it's they really shouldn't have put out these demos.
I'm not sure there is an overall demo strategy at Nintendo. I think it's very let each team decide and we're going to just let them do it kind of thing.
And there's nobody telling them what makes a good demo.
Right.
Clearly, because these two demos are not great.
Yeah.
But I do think that both of these had kind of detrimental effects to final purchase. And just based on a very small sample size of comments that we see, and our own impressions, it's a lot of people had the opposite effect. It's I played this Princess Peach demo. Yeah, this game is definitely not for me. I'm not buying this game.
Remember on the 3DS when we started doing demos, but it was you can only play this 10 times. Don't get any big ideas. You're still going to have to buy this thing, buddy.
Yeah, that's true. It was very
We're missing the point here.
That's not the point, guys. But I think Nintendo has really no strategy around demos, and so they kind of just put it out there and into the world.
We have a question from Latorno. Hey, Kit and Krysta, I was wondering, why is Picross never included in Nintendo Direct presentations? Last month, they released a trailer on the same day as the partner showcase. A similar thing happened in 2022 with Picross S8. Why isn't it at least part of a sizzle reel? We need justice for Picross.
Oh, Picross is a great game, but might be a game that has not the same popularity as it did once
They've
before.
made 8 of them. I think these are actually, I feel like these games are pretty popular.
Okay.
If they've made 8 and then there's all these other spin-offs, there's like branded ones. I don't know. I think they should do it.
Okay.
If we're talking about a sizzle reel, you need 3 seconds of footage?
Sure.
I don't know. I'm baffled.
I haven't played a Picross game in quite a long time. Have you?
I have some of these.
But have you played them recently?
Probably not in the last like month or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've played since like the 3DS.
Oh. Really?
Yeah, I don't know if I played a Picross game on Switch.
Oh, I mean, these are not like Nintendo published, so
Right.
they're a little bit lower. But they have a pretty good fan following, I feel.
I remember how big Picross was on 3DS though. We were like obsessively playing.
Do you mean Picross 3D?
Yes.
Yeah, that one was
We were
awesome.
like so obsessed
Yeah.
with Picross 3D.
Yeah.
Remember how like sunk like 50 plus hours into Picross
Yeah.
3D. Like
Yeah.
that was how into it. The
That game
whole
was great.
office was into it too.
That game was really great.
Yeah, so there was a moment where Picross was like the biggest thing ever, but I don't know if that is still the case. Maybe it is, and I just don't know. But I mean, this just goes to show how many crazy, amazing volume of games is out there that Nintendo has to pick and choose from for a sizzle reel or a showcase that has a finite amount of time.
I guess.
And you have to cherry pick like what it is that you're showing.
Yeah.
And there's not enough time. So yeah.
Next question from Tover Schmofer is pointed at you, so get ready.
Me?
I've been trying to finish Final Fantasy VII Remake so I can jump on into Rebirth before spoilers enter the internet. But I've got to ask, what is Krysta's beef with Aerith?
Oh.
So far, she seems all sweet and nice, but Krysta talks about her like Aerith bullied her in middle school. What's the tea? Explain yourself.
Aerith is not my favorite character because she feels fake to me. She feels like that girl in high school that pretends to be nice but is actually really mean.
Okay.
And is just like overly nice because she's hiding something. That is the kind of personality.
Hiding something?
It's not who she is, but
What is she hiding?
So that she's actually really like mean and evil. I don't know. Like that girl that pretends to be like overly nice to you.
There's a lot of projection happening right now. You
don't
are
know.
projecting your experiences with a certain
Maybe.
person into this fictional video game character.
Yeah, that is my sort of take on that overly sweet kind of personality. Is like it's not real. It doesn't feel authentic. It feels like you can't just like everything. You know, like there's gonna be something you don't like. What is it? That was my impression when I played the original Final Fantasy. I have to say though, in Rebirth, she doesn't bug me as much.
Oh, good.
Because there are some moments
Yeah.
where I see like another side of her.
Yes.
Like there was a great moment when someone was talking to her and Tifa and like actually being quite mean to Tifa.
Mm-hmm.
And she snaps and says like, hey, don't talk to her like that.
Yeah.
That's me. Don't do that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that was awesome. I love seeing like different facets of these characters because as humans, we all have different facets. Some days we don't feel like being nice. And I never understood.
I know that all too well.
Exactly, like today. So I was actually really happy to see that there are some like diversions to that kind of like overly pristine personality that Aerith used to have. So I was like, oh, I'm surprised that like I dislike her a little less in Rebirth.
I don't mind her. She's not my favorite character, but I don't dislike her.
She's very one-dimensional before, but now I feel like she's a little bit more well-rounded. So that's good.
Glad we settle that.
Yes.
Last question is from Paul Gale. Hi, Kit and Krysta. Do you have a favorite color for a home console? Black, white, gray, or something fantastic? I'm always fantastic. I'm intrigued by fantastic.
I thought it was futuristic.
No.
Fantastic.
Fantastic could be very fun.
Oh.
Well, we know your answer.
Yeah, it's white.
Why though?
Because everything I own is white, and it just looks
But
nice.
how?
My console.
Not long ago, not every console was white. Now you can get. So you have the PS5 has those white shells.
Nice.
We have the Series. You have the Series S Xbox.
Beautiful.
White.
Yes.
OLED Switch.
White.
white.
Yes.
But you used to have a PS4, black.
Yeah.
Your Wii U, you did not have the white Wii U.
I did not have the white Wii U because I needed more storage.
So what did you do then?
I had to live with it. I would like hide it away. Like I would behind like a closed door.
Oh wow.
But now that I do have the option, they're all sitting out, you know,
Right.
on the console. Like I have a console that has like open shelves, and it looks really. And my Switch sits on top too, so that's really nice. And I even have like the nice like controllers that charge on the little controllers, and those are white. It is nice. I mean, but I don't mind like some cool colorways. Like I do like those new Xbox controllers that are like the gradient.
They make some really nice controllers.
Gradient.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I really like that. Like I would not be opposed to something like that. I like the interchangeable covers too. So if you're like, I'll put it on for like a little while and then I'll take it off, or I'll change it up. You know, all of that is pretty cool.
Yeah,
I really like the customization that you know we have options now to do.
My answer is I don't super care that much, but I think black. Like I would really like an all black Switch. Like, you know, the original Switch, like the one I got is gray. But like black. I'm talking about black.
Okay.
And when all those rumors that, like about the Switch Pro were happening, I was like, what do you get an all black Switch Pro? And it's like metal or something, or it's like
that's classy.
Like carbon, whatever.
Carbon
it's
fiber?
that could be nice.
Oh, it's very expensive.
That was all a pipe dream.
Yeah, that's very expensive.
That could be really nice.
There was the era of stainless steel. Remember, everything was like stainless steel.
Oh, the Cybertruck, the Tesla Cybertruck, yes.
Like we could do that again. We could do that.
We see those on the street occasionally here. We live in like this is Tesla country. Like every other car around here is a Tesla. I do occasionally see, not that many though. On very rare occasions, which may speak to the popularity of that. But I do see that. What else was stainless steel though?
I feel like there was like an era where we had
consoles
that were like not stainless steel, but like the silver color was very popular back in the early 2000s, like the chrome kind of look.
Like what?
We had some. Didn't we have a silver? Oh, it was platinum DS. With platinum DS.
Oh, well, DS came in every color.
Platinum colored DS.
Not actually platinum. Disclaimer. Asterisk.
And not actually real platinum. That was a legal line. We had to put that on there. Yeah. I don't know if we should bring that back though.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems a little tacky now, but.
I will say the mismatched color Joy-Con of the Switch, I never liked that. I never liked that. And I do have some different sets of Joy-Con, but I always go the same color each way.
Yeah.
And I was a little surprised that they had that as one of the color options, but works. Obviously, it's been very popular, so maybe I'm just
like
wrong on that.
The original Switch had like the blue and red.
Yeah,
you didn't like that one, so you got the gray.
No.
And then you really like the yellow, the
arms.
The arms,
those were
yellow
great.
Joy-Con. You love that.
Those ones have kind of broken down a little bit. And then
the blue ones.
The blue ones were
like.
really nice.
Yeah.
Those are also starting to break down a little bit.
I also didn't love the bi-color Joy-Con, but I did kind of like it on my Animal Crossing because it was like two colors that were very complementary.
They were close.
They're very close. It was like one was like baby blue, one was like mint green.
Right.
So it wasn't like jarring to look at. So that was
Wasn't it they were selling, remember they had those pastel ones?
Yeah.
But you could not buy a set of the same one. That would have driven me nuts if I wanted to get those.
Those were ugly pastels too.
And that's the questions. Thanks everybody who sent one in.
They didn't look nice. They were like a weird shade of pink and yellow.
This rant is going to result in you shouting out a Final Fantasy spoiler, so we have to move on. Okay. And it is time to shout out some of our great Patreon subscribers, starting with our final boss, the one and only Aaron Hash. There he is.
Aaron Hash has been really excited because there's been big updates in NASCAR racing.
Aaron Hash is big into racing. He and I shared a moment when they announced the new Monster Jam game last week. It took a lot of restraint for me to not put that in the news,
You wanted to be on the cover of that, riding a Megalodon. That's what you wanted.
Please.
But there's been some cool collabs with like Pokemon and racing, and some cool collabs with like race tracks being modeled after Mario Kart. So Aaron Hash is eating good these days.
That's right.
All right.
And we have our superstars.
Yes. Let's start with our wonderful Ben Eichhorn.
And Mario Mayhem.
Eigenverse.
Kiss My Flapjack.
Mike Chin.
Roy Eschke.
Switching it up _
Safeza.
VGM Life.
Link, the hero of Wind.
Angela Bycroft and her pig Molly.
Thomas O'Rourke.
Kyle LaBeouf.
Roberta Nieves.
Frederick Oof Conradson.
Andrew Uhas.
Chili.
Bruce Stash.
And Simon. Wow. And then we'll wrap it up with our One Up Club graduation ceremony. Here is Aaron Burgundy.
Alejandro.
Archimedes.
Astro Dev.
Awesome 46.
Bad Moon Horizon.
Ben GB.
Bookem Dano.
Bookishly Fab.
Brad SF56.
Brooke Obscura.
Brovac Novak.
Cameron.
Chadir.
Chili Squirrel.
Chris Cube.
Christopher Lay.
Captain Alex.
Crimcat.
Cristobal.
C Roper 17.
Dachshund.
Doenko.
Elite Peach.
S Barts 50.
Fart Priest 69.
Furbound.
Fernie and Just Forever.
Fox Deploy.
Garrett Hullfish.
Garth the Wolf.
Gartooth.
Heroic.
Iris Marin.
Jay Rando.
Jeffrey Hernandez.
Jeremy Lewis.
Jerry 92602.
Jesse Hernandez.
John Responte.
Jonathan Rowe.
Jordan Collette.
Jordan Hemmerly.
Joshua Clements.
Juji Fruit.
Justin Lemminger.
Kala 2796.
Keith Kwan.
Kevin Delane.
Kilo Kibo.
Krista Roddy Elf.
Christopia Party With Me.
Kyle Gamer Barry Rookie.
Cal Kretzer.
Linnell Stickman.
Lazy Cat for Coffee.
Lex.
Lit.
Macho Potato.
Mad Dog 5981.
Magnificent Easy G plus Callie Marie.
Marky Man 64.
Mario Man 392.
Mecha Dragon 101.
Medallion.
Megan.
Michael Cravens.
Mikey.
Mr. Ryan 07.
Motomania.
Mr. Andy Palm.
Mr. Beans and Dick.
MSN Poke Gamer.
My Train.
Nasir.
Nathan Burkhart.
Nick.
Ninja 11.
Panda Buns.
Pang.
Policy Pace.
Paul Gale Network.
Prime Factor.
Prince Charmless.
Raver.
Rain Tech.
Record Rumble.
Rob Osborne.
Rocks.
Rianetta.
Sakura Sky.
Sharif Jackson.
Shinryu.
Schmiggles.
Slowbro.
Snazzle.
Spicy Munchkin.
Steel Citron.
Stevie Meeks.
Tales of Link.
Tay 120 and 64.
The Shark Among Men.
Thomas Alvarez.
Three Rivers.
Timmy V.
Topher Schmofer.
Totally Joe Ed.
Travis Torline.
Trajawi.
Tugs Puppy Bear.
Tuscoop.
Tyler Geis.
Video Game Stupid.
Vidge Michter.
Viridian.
Virtual Bob.
Weeb Kingdom.
WG Grizzy.
What up, Khalil?
YU.
Wicked Davy.
Will Johnson.
Zudaverf.
Zenda.
Zelgaroth.
Zapatty.
And Zroid. Oh, you did not escape the YU.
I had a moment of panic, and I was like, well, I'm going to have to do that one.
Oh,
no! Oh, no, I think I did it.
Wow.
YU. Okay, I think I'm over this.
I think you're okay now.
I think I'm over this. I've heard you do it enough now.
Wow. Well, what a great episode. It was so nice, again, to catch up with our friend, Stephen Totilo. Yes. And it was such an interesting conversation about just what is it like to cover Nintendo for so many years and games media in general in such an interesting place. So it was great.
Check them out.
Yes. Don't forget to subscribe to our Patreon. We are patreon.com/Kit and Krysta. It really keeps all of this going. And you get a ton of cool benefits as well. So hope you check us out.
And if you're watching on video, you can go ahead and subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and leave us a comment. And if you listen on audio, you can also subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and a written review if you please.
And we're on the socials. We're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and Threads. All right. Time to stop.
Signing off.
Bye.
Bye.